Oh, good. I was going to say to you, record. No, no, we don't quite have. Let me see. There's that list. So Carter signed in. And
Hello.
From you, if your sound, can you turn your sound up?
so he's a remote forum. Got 1, 2, 3. We got 4.
Okay.
Oh, you hear it because it's in your ears. Okay, I don't hear. It's okay. It's okay. I don't.
Here we go. Great. Okay, I think we have a quorum. Yes, we do. Okay. SG. Okay. So I guess we can probably just add too many pieces of paper. Okay. So who have we got there? We've got John DeLone as we first. Here, let's keep that here. And we have those are all the same. Wait a minute. This is
gonna grab an agenda.
oh yeah, this is not one thing.
I know.
This is several.
Yeah.
So to look over and share with, but it's also on the agenda.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, do I have the agenda here?
Yeah, I shared the email, so I think there's 3 of me here, but we all share the same. I'm Daryl.
Hi. And I'm Phil.
Which one? Who's Daryl? Raise your hand. Oh, you're Daryl. Okay, Daryl. And then you have John, right?
That's me, yes.
Thank you. Hi, John.
Hi.
And then Phil.
No, I'm Phil,
Okay.
right?
Great. See, we were prepared for you. We elevated you already in time for the presentation, and I think we're really going to begin. We always have to wait for a quorum. And I believe we do have a quorum right now. Yeah, we've got Stella, so we've got our quorum.
And how about Pete?
Welcome. We hope that
You're
you're
muted.
Hi all.
okay. Are we on? Do you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, so good evening and welcome to Community Board 2 Manhattan's Traffic and Transportation April meeting. I am Shirley Secunda. I'm the chair of the committee, and I will introduce the members of my committee who are here right now, but some others may be coming along the way. So Janet, you want to start?
Janet Liff, public member. Susan Gammy, full board member.
Anthony Wong, member.
Lois Stratford, member.
Okay, so that's who we have here right now, and we also have Carter Booth, who is a member of the board too and former chair. So he's here as our guest tonight. And Roy Ruiz, who's from Assembly Member Deborah Glick's office. So anyhow, I'll tell you a little bit about our routine. In case, because you guys have not been here. Paul and John and Daryl have not been here. You have seen the agenda, right?
Yes.
And you see that you are first on the agenda and that we have 4 items on the agenda tonight. And the way we go over items is each one is addressed individually, which means that whoever is sponsoring the request, the presentation, will give the request and the presentation. Then the committee asks questions, and then our guests from the community and whoever else asks their questions and also make comments. We don't make our comments. The committee doesn't make their comments until all 4 items are heard. We do ask questions, and that's when we go into business session. And at that point, when we do have business session, no one else can speak except us, but that doesn't mean that people can't stay and listen to what we're saying. But at that time, we're deliberating about what we're going to do with these 4 issues that come up in the presentation. And this is Mercer St, who is another member of the.
I wonder if I would hear better.
Okay. And, okay, so then, nothing is decided finally. tonight.
Is it too
Us,
loud?
All
Then
committees,
go back in the other
the
room.
full board
Just carry
meeting,
it back in the
which
other room.
this month is on Thursday, April
Just carry
18th.
it.
And it is at the Lenox Hill at the Health Plex, which is on West 17th Street off 7th Avenue. I don't have the exact address, but you can look on the board's agenda and calendar, and that will be there. And that's where the final decision will be made. And if one would want to come and present their case to the full board, that's when you do it in the public session. But we will be doing probably a resolution in response to your request, and then our resolution will be reviewed at full board. And we have guests both online, I think, and in person as well. So once we ask our questions, we will go to our guests, their questions. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else to tell you about our routine. Just that everybody that's attending, if you're online, you know about the little raise hand symbol, just raise your hand and we will call on you during our public session. And usually we just have time to hear you everybody one at a time. So think about everything you want to ask and say. That doesn't apply to you guys who are giving a presentation and we'll be answering our questions. So I think that's about it. Obviously, please don't shout out. We will be happy to call on you when the time comes to call on you. And if you do shout out, we'll just simply mute you. So Anthony is ready to mute. And Anthony, by the way, will be running our whole session tonight. So Anthony, I guess that's it. So without further ado, we're ready for your presentation.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Perfect.
Okay, 1 second. While I'm doing that, I'll introduce. So my name is Darrell Rank, and I'm a managing director at Brown Harris Stevens, who manages 583, 587 Broadway, 158 Mercer. John DeLone is our resident manager of the building. He's been in the building for 27 years. Pete Mystery is a fellow owner that lives on the same block. Pete owns 579, 581 Broadway, which is also 151 Mercer, which is a building that is next to us. And Phil Satow is a resident and board member of 583, 587 Broadway in apartment 8B. The three of them probably have 75 combined years of experience living or working and owning in that neighborhood. I'm relatively new, but I submitted the request. So that being the case, here's our presentation. It's a loading zone request. I have your agenda. So here's a neighborhood map. Essentially what we're looking at here is, this is Mercer Street from north to south. Our building is located here where the yellow line is, 158 Mercer. We're asking essentially for a relocation of a parking area that is over here in front of 165 Mercer Street. That was formerly a parking garage. We have pictures of the signs that are there. You can see that there's, below us down here is the Mercer Hotel. So there's two no standing, no parking zones. This is a no standing zone, I believe, and no parking up here. To shift one to the other side of the street is essentially the request in a nutshell. This is a map of one step back. You know, the buildings on this street have access on both sides. We enter both here and on the back side of the building. The Broadway side, there's not even worth asking for the request. It's much heavier traffic. There's a bus lane, so it'd be inefficient to have, you know, any parking on that side of the building, or a loading zone. I'm misspeaking. So the main points that we put here, we put a loading zone parking sign request in front, 158 Mercer Street. That would benefit other residents on the block, as I showed in the previous screen, that there's no loading zone at all on the eastern side of the street. It's only on the western side. Our building is double the height and capacity of the other neighboring buildings. this issue about the buildings being pass-through buildings. It says 158 Mercer and many residential buildings on Mercer Street are through buildings. Essentially, what we're saying here is that they have entrances on both sides. And if, being that there's no way to park on the Broadway side, that if there was just a loading zone or on the eastern side of that street, which we showed before, people would be able to get out there and cross through their building even to the other side. Broadway residents cannot double park on Broadway due to load and the bus lane. Mercer Street, I'm going to show pictures of some of these conditions afterwards, that after COVID took place, Laura's Restaurant took up 4 to 5 parking spaces out in the street. And the Mercer Hotel has a no standing or no loading zone in front that takes up 4 to 5 spots. The Mercer garage at 165, second here, at 165 Mercer, still has the no parking signs there in front, which take up 4 to 5 spots. That's what we're essentially asking to switch that over. Essentially, it proposes reducing the no parking coverage in front of 165 Mercer to accommodate 158 Mercer. Having a designated loading zone in front of 158 Mercer will also benefit the many families and seniors in the neighborhood. Pete can attest to the fact that he also has ADA concerns in his building with people that need access. I think he actually had a family member as well that did not have to double park to load and offload in the middle of the street, which would reduce traffic and create a safer environment. The loading zone will also benefit Uber drivers and deliveries on the block. 158 Mercer, we're going to show this. Our building is the only building on that street that has a 24/7 doorman that sits right inside of the area where we're requesting the loading zone that could monitor this area. And this would reduce the noise pollution, which I'm going to let the residents speak about as well, is that when we get to the pictures I'll show you later on, that when that street gets constricted, if one car has to stop to unload people, Uber, shopping, groceries, people start leaning on their horns and everybody in that neighborhood is negatively impacted. So we have some pictures to show up here. I think that perfectly demonstrate. This is the 165 Mercer space that was at the upper left-hand side of the map that I showed earlier. There's probably about 4 or 5 spaces here that used to be a parking garage, and it was repositioned into commercial real estate. All those spaces are still there. And, people disregard the parking in that area anyway. I think they park there anyway, but that area is not used for its original intent because they used to previously need access there. This is a picture at the bottom of the southern portion of the street on Mercer looking north. Here's the restaurant that put up the street shed. Here's where the Mercer Hotel is, where you can see that they have a loading zone on the western side of the street. So this is from north to south looking at the Mercer, right? Big space there. And this is the signage that's in that neighborhood or in that location. This is just pictures on Mercer north to south. This is our building here in the center where I have the pointer. This is how narrow the street can get. So if anyone has to pull here and stop, cars back up, people start leaning on their horns, and there's a whole bunch of residential property that sits in this neighborhood that's negatively impacted. So this is the Broadway side of the street. I'm zooming in here because you can see that there's a bus lane. People park there. If I have people that are dropping, we can pass through. But on this side, it would be ineffective to have parking on that side of the street or that street location. This is the proposed location that we're talking about. This is the door to our building. I think, Pete, if I'm correct, you're directly south of us. And then, we're looking at this space to this space. There's currently a fire hydrant there, so this is narrow. This is a zoom back from across the street. And that's essentially my presentation part. Pete, John, Phil, did any of you want to add any input that I missed?
No, absolutely. So, I agree with everything with what Daryl was saying. In addition, the Mercer Hotel they don't allow us to park there or stand over there. It's ridiculous. I'm not only a landlord, I'm also a resident in the building, but it becomes very difficult that they're basically just using that area for themselves. So really, there's an area that's needed. Unfortunately, the existing area where the parking garage used to be is people are parking there. Nobody's monitoring it. They're ignoring the sign. It becomes very difficult. My dad was actually amputated. He was wheelchair bound, and we had a situation where literally the ADA cab pulled up in front. There were cars parked, double parked, and it was so difficult for him to get on and to load on. This happened us a few times. In addition, people behind, not the person right in back of the Uber, but a couple of people behind were honking because they didn't even know what was going on and that there was a wheelchair-bound person loading on. In addition, I also have some residents that are actually seniors. One of them is also wheelchair-bound, also has the same difficulty. I've had several experiences where coming back from the airport, not finding parking on the weekends, and literally taking my bags out of the Uber, and people are honking, and it's just, there's nowhere I can stand, and that's just the experiences I have. Phil, I don't know, you as a resident, if you can also chime in on some of your
Yes.
experiences.
If I could, I'm a senior citizen. I mean, I'm 82 years old, and my wife and I have a terrible problem pulling our car. We arrive at the apartment building, and we just have to stop all traffic because there's no way we can get our bags out. We can't pull our car over. The no parking zone on the other side of the street is filled with cars. No one pays attention to that. But if it was in front of our building, we'd be able to. We have doormen that are in the building 24 hours, and they could assure that it's the regulations is being monitored, and there'd always be a space for someone in the building who has to pull over just to drop their bags off. And I think it's a safety issue also, because for me to be carrying my bags in the middle of the street with people blowing their horns, I'm fearful that one of these drivers is they're all angry that they don't know why I'm holding up their traffic. It's a dangerous situation as well. So every time I have to shop and use my car and drop anything off, it's a terrible situation. And I don't think anybody should be put through that. And the police don't realize it, so they're not going to let us just double park. We can't. So there's no way to deal with it, unfortunately. And so I really please ask that you really consider just moving this spot from the other side of the street as requested.
One other thing that I just like to add to that is this wouldn't only benefit us. Any Uber driver, anybody, any taxi driver, any car service can just pull over there to drop off any passengers or pick up, and it becomes so much more efficient instead of blocking everybody. I have numerous, and I think Phil can probably attest to this too, the noise pollution that's created especially on the weekends. During the weekdays, it's not as bad, but on the weekends when things are backed up, it's terrible. You can hear it through the windows and stuff, just people honking, so this would help alleviate some of that noise pollution.
I mean, the one point I like to make is a very unsafe condition with a double parking as well, with the cars, frustrated drivers. And also another point I want to make is with the Lourdes restaurant, the Mercer Hotel, 165 Mercer, it's at least 15 parking spots that are not being used by the residents on Mercer Street. So we're just requesting one spot to be relocated to 158 Mercer Street.
Okay, anything else? That's the committee will start asking questions. So Janet's got a question.
I hear you, and thank you for your presentation. It's very clear, very comprehensive. Have you spoken to 165 Mercer? Like, did they, like, I don't know how much activity happens on that, and if you get loading there, then you're just kind of switching problem on the opposite side of the street. So do they know, like, do they care and do they know that they may lose some loading zone?
So I have not spoken to that particular building. I don't know if Daryl has, but I know that that building is an office building. So during the weekends, it's pretty much empty. And unfortunately, people haven't fully returned to offices yet either. But there is not that residential need. It's a very different one. The buildings that we're talking about, my building and the building next door, they're residential buildings, and we've got weekend traffic. We've got people bringing groceries. They're moving things in and out. The other building is just a pure office building with a retail base.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes, separate from the issue of your need, which I totally understand. My question / concern is that a relocation from one spot to the other will also relocate the problem of people parking. I mean, there's no reason to assume that they wouldn't park in a relocated no parking zone. And if, the police are not being attentive to that issue there, it's not an unreasonable assumption that they won't be attentive in front of your building. So what would change? I mean, you mentioned that your doorman would be involved in this. And I wonder about, assigning law enforcement to duties to a doorman and how your doorman might feel about this. And is this even a safe thing for a doorman to be doing?
Well, I've spoken to the staff, so we can politely ask someone to move. If they don't comply, then they don't. But at least it's an option to have a no loading zone in front of the building. So it's a good option.
I mean, Mercer keeps their, Pete, you had said Mercer keeps their space, right? Because they have staff there. I think somebody just going out and saying you can't park there could be very helpful.
But you just said that that the other spot, people were parking there.
Well,
So
no, I just want to make sure I clarify. So what Pete had said before is that the space that's further up the street is a commercial space and it's not monitored. Where the Mercer Hotel is, which is further down on the right-hand side, they would be the same as ours. And because they have 24/7 staffing, if somebody pulls in there, they tell them they can't park and they leave. We're just asking to have that one space on the other side to balance out the neighborhood so you'd have two loading zones on each side.
thank
Two
you.
utilized zones. Right now, the other one is not being utilized at all. I mean, it's blatantly being, disregarded. I mean, you'll see it. I see it every weekend.
But we're here just to talk about the one area for what you want, which is the
Correct.
low.
Correct.
The other things really, we can't address tonight.
Okay.
Several other parking spaces, they'd have to ask themselves. So we're going to focus on yours, and Rocio wants to ask.
Yeah, so if I understood you correctly, the configuration of the building at 165 Mercer Street is a commercial building with retail. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
That-
so
No, it's office.
with the
It's
building,
office, yeah.
with the
It's
building at 165 also requests the same accommodation that you're requesting. And that's one question. And how many residents live in the building at 158 Mercer Street?
23.
The 23 apartments.
So it's
23
apartment.
apartments.
Right. And then Pete, how many do you have in yours?
14 apartments.
Right. So you're probably talking, 2 or 3 people per apartment in mine. So that's probably 50 residents. Pete, you probably have 30 to 40,
Yeah.
about 100 people. And then there's other buildings that are on that side of the block that are all residential in nature.
And I'm also not built full. I can literally double my capacity, which down the line I'm going to entertain. So literally I can also become a 12-story building as of right.
So I understand that you are requesting this, but why should we grant you this specific accommodation when so many other buildings, including the building across the street, 165 Mercer, may want the same thing? Not just for the people that live in the people that have business in the building, but also the retail. I'm sure they want their deliveries. I'm sure they want access to what they have now. And that now you want us to take that away from them and give it to you. Why should we do that?
Well, right now it's not being utilized at the other building. That's what it is. Nobody's monitoring it. It's
Yeah.
becoming a de facto parking spot.
And
So-
they do have at least 5 parking spots in front of their building.
Yeah, as I said, we're not talking about the other parking spots. I understand. Just that one entrance there. Lois.
Yes, thank you. This is a chronic situation in our community. I live on Little Thompson Street, and I do understand. The last question, I need to preface it. My question is, you're asking for a loading zone spot as opposed to like a no standing or what would prevent a laboring truck that is going to be working in your building or any building, because you said it would be shared. It would be shared with the whole block, not just your building, to stay there and use it as a loading zone, because they're loading and unloading, and just stay there.
Any answer?
What was the question again?
Daryl?
What would prevent a truck from standing there? I think we had said that there would be staff, and I think in response to the previous question, we're not asking for us, we're asking for all of the residential buildings on that side of the street. And we have one of our neighbors that's right next door to here that's representing the same. Is that it's not a specific request for our building, it's so that if each side was balanced, it just would make more sense.
And it would be a true loading spot as opposed to right now, which it's just a de facto parking spot. That's
It's a public loading spot.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely looking for a public, it would definitely, yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else on the committee? Carl?
Yeah, so you have a golden situation for your current conditions that are the envy of almost every building. You have commercial metered parking in front of your building, which allows all commercial activity to happen. And you have no parking along your parking, which includes what you're asking for during the day. No parking allows loading and unloading. And the designation here of what you're asking for is really tailored to your specific building when those conditions during the daytimes already exist. Most of the neighborhood loading zones are precisely the exact same time that you're asking for. And it sounds like you have more of an enforcement issue with no parking that you should address with the precinct instead of for the request that you're asking. Because if nobody is paying attention to the parking side, they're certainly not going to pay attention to the loading signs. And there's nothing that would prevent your doorman from saying to people, hey, you can't park here, if that's going to be their, what they do. But I think that that's a very dangerous situation, as we know from, we're allowed to make mistakes.
What's going on?
So I'm just asking why.
Could I ask a question?
People said, why would you need this extra privilege, which is outside the daytime hours when most activity happens, when you can already do it there?
Good. Could I ask you, given you've heard of the presentation, what request would you make then? Are you saying that you admit that we have this problem and we can unload our baggage at all, but our request is not the right request? Is there another request that would give us the ability to drop our things off?
But you can already do that under the existing regulations.
Where?
No, there is
no.
No parking.
No, that's not correct.
No. I'm sorry, sir. No parking regulations allow for standing, loading and unloading. I posted in the chat
Right.
the New York City regulations.
No.
That's already allowed.
Yeah, so do you have no parking right now? That was one of my questions, was what regulation is right now in front of the building?
Nothing. There is no regulation in front of the building. There's
There's
no
gotta be
prohibitive signs.
What?
There's no prohibitive signs at this stage. So on the
Well, they're on the
weekends, everybody
street, and
parks.
we have a regulation on the street, right? You can't not have a regulation.
No parking.
So what is your regulation on the street? You know? No?
I don't understand the question. Can you?
Every street has parking.
It's no
regulations.
parking from Monday through Friday from 8 to 6.
No
Monday
parking.
through Saturday, I believe, 8 to 6.
6.
John, isn't that correct?
That's
Right.
correct. Yeah, 8 to 6, Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday?
Monday through Friday on the Mercer side.
Free parking Monday through Friday from 8 to 6. Okay, now I'm going to read you what no parking allows. Okay. For no parking, is waiting allowed? No. Can I stop to drop off or pick up passengers? Yes. Can I stop to load or unload a package or merchandise at curbside? Yes. You have the regulations right now to accommodate what you want. If we do a no, listen to me. If we do a no loading zone, that's what we will do. It will be a no parking sign, and it would probably be whenever you want the no parking. And you want it all the time, anytime. Is Jackie Lazaro here? No, Anthony, because she's from DOT and she can probably clarify it for you. I had no idea that, thank you, that your standard regulations right now are no parking. That allows for loading and unloading.
But not on weekends.
Not weekend.
Is Jackie there?
Yeah.
Jackie, can elevator?
Things and weekends.
Yeah, weekends. It's always parked and it's always jam packed, and that becomes the problem. The weekends
Can
are.
we get Jackie?
The problem is the weekend.
Yep, Sherry, and like you mentioned, the no parking anytime does allow for unloading, drop off of passengers and merchandise or packages. So it seems like the concern is with the hours. So they could always, go to do a no parking anytime, but again, it would be the same issue. They would just have to make sure that it is enforced.
So we need to enforce it.
And
No
weekends.
parking anytime allows for what I just said, Jackie, right?
Yes,
The
exactly.
little chart that DOT gave me would allow for both loading, unloading, and drop-off pickup, and delivery, short delivery, right?
But-
Yep. Drop-off pickup. Now, the
But-
question is, so somehow I was thinking that you just wanted this right in front of your building.
No, for the weekends we can't park.
Regulation already.
There
You
is.
understand that? Except that right now it's Monday through Saturday.
And
No, it's through Friday, I was told.
Again. So what are you asking for? No parking?
24/7.
When? You
We'd
know,
like to have the
Well-
same thing in front of our building that the Mercer Hotel has across the street. How were they, if these are the
what does the
regulations?
Mercer Hotel have?
No parking anytime. That's
No parking any, so is that what you're requesting? Is no parking anytime?
Yes,
That would work, no parking anytime.
Well, it would work for every day. Is that what you wanted for every day and every night?
it would allow a zoning. It would allow a loading area that would be present all the time, including
Jackie.
weekends.
Okay,
Yes.
Jackie, Jackie there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so can they just get a no parking anytime sign in front of their building for one space?
So we don't do it for one space. It would be from, I think, so the Mercer Hotel, I believe, has a hotel loading zone. So it would be up until from where that signage is. We wouldn't be able to do it for just one space.
Is it
Okay,
30
so-
feet, 40 feet? How much
Yeah,
space do you
that's-
need?
So our engineers would have to take a look at it and see, you know, what works, especially if it's a no parking anytime, just because that would also be eliminating all overnight parking. So we would have to see, you know, they would have to go and inspect and determine what would be most suitable for this area.
Okay.
Or for this location.
Okay, theoretically, if we were to ask for this, what would we ask for? No parking anytime from where the Mercer Hotel parking ends?
Look, any space on that side of the street that would be
Well, I'm asking
conducive to
the
allow.
ladies DOT. Jackie,
So you could ask for, and is this on the west side of Mercer?
We are on the east side.
So you would ask for no parking anytime on the east side, north of, or I guess you would just ask for no parking anytime where the signage is currently dictated as no parking anytime Monday through Friday on the on the east side of Mercer Street.
it's Monday through Saturday, right?
Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay, because they said through Saturday, so it's
No,
not.
it's Monday through Friday.
So it would be no parking anytime on the east side of Mercer Street.
Yeah, that currently follows the regulations of no parking Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That would be the request.
That currently follows no parking 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And this would be anytime, meaning beyond Monday through Friday. So this would include the whole 12, is that it?
No. This would like basically replace the signage or the section of the east side of Mercer Street that follows the current no parking on Monday through Friday. So I believe north of the hotel they have their own separate signage.
Okay. All right, so this would be the east side of Mercer, and what is that between? I know I have it written down between and between, but what is it between?
Prince and what, John? What's the North Street?
Houston.
Houston.
And would we, what is it between Prince and Houston? Prince and Houston, okay.
Could I ask a question of Daryl and John? We don't need the whole street parking at no time. We could just have no parking in 2 or 3 spot areas where at the building. It doesn't have to be the whole
I think is
street.
what the regulations are. Jackie, is that possible?
So I'm gonna be honest, I have not heard of a situation where we do it for 1 or 2 parking or 1 or 2 spots in the middle of a block. You know, it can happen like at the end.
But that's just the one space. Yeah, so if I'm putting it look like one space, it would look like more.
Yeah, I mean, one.
Oh, there's a fire hydrant too, so they couldn't park in front of the fire hydrant. You know what, Jackie, we actually did once have a case like this. It was 1 Fifth Avenue. And they did get to no parking in front of their building. And I should tell you gentlemen about this, that they had a horrible time once they got it. Be careful sometimes what you wish for.
All right. Well, look, I mean, we're
Plus cars, vehicles constantly filled in that empty space. And so they were back where they started. So historically, there was a time when it was granted, but they 1 Fifth Avenue came back to us and they said, we'd like to restore it to what it was because it filled up. It just didn't work. That's up to you whether you might want to take that chance.
well, that's why we're here, because we're concerned about the safety and the other negative issues that it costs. Look, I don't want to elongate your meeting. I manage boards, so I wanted to thank you all for meeting with us. These are all people.
No.
No, that volunteer
meeting.
No.
I will tell you when we're done. Excuse me. Can I just ask a few questions I'd like to ask?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so when you were thinking of the loading zone in the first place, you were thinking of one space?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
They wanted one, okay. One space, okay. When you were talking about switching, do you understand we can't ask for switching? Nobody else is here to ask this. It would be for whatever you're requesting. You do understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. We got the current regulations. And that was one of my questions. And now about your building, is it totally residential? You do have ground floor retail, right?
Yes.
Okay, and otherwise residential? Would the ground floor retail be able to make use of that loading zone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So use also, okay. And we talked about hours. Okay, I guess that's it. So we'll discuss this in business session.
Public,
Oh, and,
public. Any public comment?
oh, public comments, right. Do we have some? Yes.
I have a question.
We have some folks from the community asking.
Okay.
Laura Tannenbaum.
Hi, there's something that sort of bothers me about this application. I guess the first thing that came to my mind is that I think I held the public hearing on the conversion of this building to joint live work quarters for artists. And clearly it's gone a long way from that. This is a problem that's endemic throughout Soho on all the narrow streets. It's a problem on Crosby Street. It's a problem on Mercer Street. It's a problem on Worcester Street. And it's not only in Soho, it's on all our narrow streets. If we start doing this for one, it can become an avalanche. And you can't just say yes to one and no to others. Everybody who lives in that building knew the conditions that Soho has had since I moved here, and that was more than 50 years ago. They knew those conditions and they've been living with it. To me, it's just a further signal of gentrification in the area. And that's part of what bothers me a bit, although it's not the practical part of, do we put in no loading, what is the zone what did you finally figure out? That it can't be no parking, it's going to be.
No, it would be no parking, and there probably would be no parking.
No, anytime.
The way they're asking, it would be no parking anytime.
Anytime. In addition to that, it is still a busy street with a lot of trucks. And their doorman has absolutely no right in the world to go out and say, you can't load and unload here. It's right next to a restaurant, as they said, and that's a problem. It has a shed. And you know what? What's going to be using that spot is going to be the unloading and loading for foods every day for that restaurant. And that's going to be a problem. I don't think it's practical, and I don't think it's right. And that's my only point. I think that I'm going to say one other point, is I think that looking at Soho, there has to be a plan for how we're going to deal with cars and things like that. I'm hoping that congestion pricing will help make some of this easier and get some of the congestion away.
Never.
Whatever.
Never.
That's for another meeting. Okay, anybody?
Jonathan Wiseman.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon, everybody. I just have one quick question. Have you guys spoken to Laura? Because aren't the sheds supposed to be taken down, and then they have the option of not having the shed back up there? I mean, I'm just trying to, I understand it. Parking is.
Harvey, you want to? He's asking about the option of the shed.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the shed may go down. Lure may not keep a shed there.
Yeah, the requirements for under the new dining at NYC rules are the shed can only be the length of the restaurant itself, number one, so it will be shorter. And I'm not sure the specifics there, but there's a clearance requirement from the intersection as well, which I don't recall.
Right, but what I'm saying is that Lure may say we don't want to do a shed anymore, and they may not choose to do a shed.
Yeah, well, they can't do a shed. The sheds are not allowed anymore.
Whatever they build, they have whatever is required by the city with the new installation of sheds. They may say we don't want this new design. We're just going to forego it, and then they'll give back the parking spots back to the neighborhood.
So I'm just looking at the street. You have a stop sign there. There's a daylighting requirement of 20 feet setback from the intersection. So the front of Lure being a corner business is going to really preclude the length of their roadbed dining, and they won't be able to have a structure. They don't have to be less than, I think, three feet roughly, so the stop sign is visible. So that's going to change, and after August 3rd, if it's non-compliant, they will have to change it.
Right. Okay, Anthony, anybody else from public? No?
Could
I guess, yes.
May I request
one thing, Phil, go ahead.
Did I think that certainly if it was decided that it was no parking any time on that whole street, that would answer certainly the lady's comment who was made in regard to having lived here for 50 years. I've been here for 20 years, and I think the traffic has increased dramatically in those 20 years. So the problem has gotten worse, and it still is a safety problem in trying to unload things in the middle of the street. So perhaps the concept of making that entire street on the east side of Mercer, no parking anytime, would be safer because any delivery could be made. That legally is allowed, I understand. And we could drop things off and no one was allowed to park. And therefore, it would be a much safer street because it wouldn't be as narrow and people could drop things off that they wanted. So maybe our request, I'd like to ask John.
Honestly, you said that, and you've all been very polite and said you're not going to take up any more of our time, and we do have to move on now. I think we've gotten all our inputs, and you've made your points. It's a matter of how it's going to get balanced, and we will discuss it in our business session, and we will move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is open. Has the committee had a chance to take a look at the list of the open streets? And the situation right now is that DOT has approved these open streets, but they've given us 45 days to comment. So if you have seen on that list open streets that you feel are not working, now's the time to talk about. And I will just start with saying that we have had an open streets that we've had a problem with for years now, and that is Lafayette Street between Kenmare and Spring Street. We've gotten innumerable complaints from the community. I'm starting with this because this is an open sore, okay? And there have been skateboarders. People open streets are supposed to be where people can freely walk and enjoy themselves. They can't on that street because it's been taken over by skateboarders. There are all kinds of restaurant activities have been going on there. I believe there right now is a pop-up store there where there are kind of uncontrolled activities. So in general, we've been asking for this open street to be discontinued for years. We have
This particular one.
resolutions on it.
This particular one.
This particular one. So I just wonder if anybody on the committee has anything more to say on that. And I think there might be folks from the public who are here to talk about that particular one, and then we can go move on to the others. Anybody on the committee? Is there anybody from the public? Oh, Janet, yeah.
When was the last time we passed a resolution against that?
Oh, I think 2022. And it's on our, oh, and it's another thing too. That open street is next to Petrosino Square, or some call it Petrosino Park. We were promised years and years ago, I think that maybe 2018, that there would be something called Reimagine Petrosino Square. It was going to be redone completely, meaning the surrounding streets as well. The city had promised that they would donate funds to this. It's just never happened. DOT has told us that it's been postponed because of COVID, okay. But originally it was supposed to really go into action in 2022. So we're still waiting in 2024 to this glorious plan, which the mayor at the time had promised, along with our council people. That was when Corey Johnson was our speaker, to tell you how far back it goes. So the combination of keeping this whole area with Petrosino Square and then the surrounding streets, oh, there were other things too. I mean, we were supposed to have public art. The community had asked for a space for public art by Petrosino Park, and originally it was there. But then DOT moved that to put in a city bike station.
Yeah.
And we had asked for that to be moved. Nobody said, take it away. They just said, move the city bike station. And that was not done. So the hope was that if Petrosino Square, Reimagine Petrosino Square was done, that all these conflicts could be addressed. But until then, let's at least get rid of that unwanted, destructive open street.
Or can I answer that? Because if it's an open street adjacent to a park, we're starting to suggest how we can expand the square.
Yeah, but that's a whole other thing about expanding Petrosino Park. They're supposed to come to us to do a plan. This is a street that has been the bane of these residents' existence. Hey, it's the bane of our existence. When I visit there, I can't walk on that street. It's always taken up by skateboarders. Anybody from the public here to talk about it?
Well, just to agree with you, Shirley. No, just to agree with you, Shirley.
Yeah.
In particular, the situation since 2020, when they first started the program, it's just been skateboarders using up the space, not regular people.
They're regular people too, they're just.
Regular people with wheels.
Oh, we've got people about here. Terrible, I can't speak.
I mean, I guess my question would be, who asked for it originally?
Restaurants.
Yeah, I guess so, like, but if it's generally pretty empty, which lends itself to activity by skateboarders. So
yeah,
have they ever actually proposed to use it, expand seating in that open street? Because it's not that long, it's like that
right,
long.
It's just.
So have I guess my question would be like, have they proposed actual uses of that space? And whether or not I would say like, whether if the proposal is to get rid of it, then that's another thing. But if the proposal, like alternatively, the proposal would be keep it and like figure out something to actually do with it, because it's set it like as an open street, residents should be able to use it. And if it's not being actually used for anything, it's just empty street that would lend itself to that sort of activity.
Yeah, well, my impression is that originally there were some restaurants in it. And Carter, you said that the last time you looked, there weren't even
Right.
restaurants.
So the, one of the lenses I think with the open streets we should look through is whether or not the programs are used in any way that they're allowed through the open streets program. Some streets are used and others are not. And I think that without the administrators of each of the streets, each one is unique, each one has its own situation in different parts of our community. But I think that's the main question, is if they're being used under any aspect which is allowed under the open streets program. And that's an important part, because we don't want to have issues with one where then suddenly people will not allow good applications somewhere else where they're properly utilized.
Right.
And it just becomes a de facto abandoned street that's just closed all the time and not used. And I think that that's a reasonable question, because we like to see active engagement.
Well, sure, that was the whole idea for the open
That's right.
streets.
Yeah.
But the question is,
Do we
this is
know?
something that residents have been complaining about for years. And then, of course, you've got the broader question of the redo of the whole Petrosino Square area, which, Ben, to address you, would mean that it would be designed in such a way that it could serve other purposes. But it's just not happening.
So I guess the question comes back, because they do not do an open street without a sponsor who
The
is
sponsor
sponsoring
was
it.
a restaurant at the time.
And they.
Well, you want to take a look, and there should be the,
Because if you simply even just put public seating in that space, then.
Yeah, but there's nobody to do it.
yeah, but that's it. I mean, it's just gone on too long. Are there other folks that,
Are we moving on to other?
Everybody finished?
Is that, are we still just on on Lafayette Street?
because I think we have to say something.
Michelle, member?
Yes, hi, sorry, I just didn't know if you saw my hand before you moved on, but yeah, no, I was gonna actually say pretty much what Carter just said. So I agree that I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, just to see what the problems are and the problem streets, but not to, but to support where maybe there are good things that an open street is doing to create more of a community space, and to, if there are different things happening that really contribute to a sense of community and a sense of sort of people walking around and using streets, not just for cars, is one point I wanted to make. And then the second is, skateboarders, it's a great sport and all that, but they're definitely a problem, not just in open streets, but also in parks when, people feel like, kind of in danger by them. And I'm wondering if, we can insist upon enforcement instead of saying, oh, it's not working because it's taken over by
They've been
skateboarders.
asking for enforcement for years. This is not a sudden problem. This is for years, and they've gone to the police. The police have not done anything. It is a non-working street, and believe me, I'm in favor of open streets for serving the community. But this has been an issue that has come before us endlessly. Yeah, we know about Washington Square Park too, and the skateboarders. We're talking about one specific street where we have gotten endless complaints, but it is not usable by residents. That's all I can tell you.
So there should be enforcement.
This is not,
Enforcement to get rid of the,
there should be, but they're not doing it. So what would
who's
you
responsible for the
suggest?
enforcement, the police?
That's a group.
Anthony,
So are we going down per street and allowing comment, or you want to go through the whole list and then we allow comment?
well, I just want to see what would be pulled from the list. Susan wants to say something. So
Thank you, Shirley. I have a question. What is the responsibility of the sponsor if any, in terms of ensuring that there isn't inappropriate use of an open street it has sponsored?
I think the responsibility of the sponsor is to open the street, to close it, right? I think
that.
probably to keep it clean. I don't even know if that's the case. I don't think that they really have a responsibility to oversee activity. It's more to maintain the condition of the street.
And to put out tables.
But not, certainly not to monitor it.
Wasn't there for table and chairs as well?
Well, if they're doing a restaurant, if they have some kind of amenities,
Yeah.
put out. But basically the sponsor is simply to open the street at the time it is scheduled to open and to close it. But, or the vice versa, obviously. The open street is closed and then it's open when the time ends for the street to not be an open street. And I think that's about it. Does anybody else? That's always been my impression.
Oh, Shirley, if I could just quickly interject.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you pretty much nailed it on the head. The partner is in charge of, setting up and closing the open street, as well as, working on any programming that happens on the actual open street. Now, like.
So like a school having an open street would have games and that sort of thing, right?
Exactly, and, maintaining the 15-foot emergency access lane.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, just to continue. So like for something like maintaining that emergency access, if that they would be responsible for having somebody out there to make sure for safety reasons that those safety standards are maintained at all times.
They would, yes, so they would be required to have to maintain the 15-foot emergency access lane. And that means like not having any large items or like furniture that, would impede an emergency vehicle accessing that street.
Yeah, so it would be for vehicle accessibility, the 15-foot clearance, the vehicle accessibility. That does not have to do with monitoring bad activity, right, Jackie? I mean, that would be NYPD, which is not responsive to this.
Yep, any enforcement concerns would fall under NYPD.
Right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So just to educate me, please. The sponsors of each individual, did they file an application to renew this? Is this how it came about?
That's mine, right, Jackie?
Yeah, so they apply and
so are the sponsors, is anybody here from the sponsors so that they can address the concerns that have been brought up at this meeting?
I would doubt it. Okay, who's next?
Laura Tannenbaum.
Okay, Laura.
How come I always have to be first?
Oh, you weren't actually.
No, well, you're right. I was kind of really in favor of a open street on Petrosino Square Park. And in fact, before they started doing open streets, I spoke to some people at the DOT about doing it. I was wrong. The experience has shown it doesn't work there. It's just around the corner from me. It's the way I walk to my pharmacy, which as I'm getting older is a lot more frequent. The street is not used by the community. It's not used by the residents. It's barely used by visitors. There was an event done for Halloween this year that was supposed to be there. Everything was in the park or it was on the sidewalk. Barely anybody walked in the street. The street is not welcoming, which is a very sad thing, but it's not welcoming. The Altamira group has not kept it clean. For weeks, we could have garbage on the side. from the restaurants. Hopefully that would be gone now that with the containerization, but before we did have the bags. The displays would fall off their sheds and not be picked up for a season in the street. Where the sheds were not, there were trucks and cars. And you have to remember that this little block is where Lafayette Street starts going south. So all the traffic that wants to go south on Lafayette Street comes down Spring, turns right there, or would turn right there where the closed street is, where the open street is, and then go on down. And that's prohibited, and it means a lot of traveling throughout the neighborhood to be able to get back to where they want to go. For me, it's a minor inconvenience. I don't drive, so but one of the things that happens is that I've noticed there's also a bike lane there. And what I see happening with the trucks and cars turning, particularly, it's a narrow way, and I'm concerned about the fact that very often as the trucks turn, they clip the bike lane. They go over the lines. That wouldn't happen with an open street, except we never know when it's open or not, and that's been another problem. It doesn't start at noon. It may not start all day. It may start a little earlier. It may start a little later. You don't know when it closes. There's no continuity with this. It's just badly run, and it's not working. We had a really good place for the community to gather. We had a great pedestrian plaza. We had already had Petrosino Square Park as a community expanded. We had a lane taken out and made into the park already. We did that. And what happened? The DOT took it over for city bikes. It took our community space where we gathered, where we had artists sitting and drawing and painting. We had that taken away from us. And you know what? This open space did not give it back. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Laura. Right. Anyone else?
Pete Davies.
Pete?
Hi, yeah, thank you. So it's just surprising to me, I'm talking about Lafayette between Spring and Kenmare, that this letter from DOT, from Mr. Pinkar, says that they have been approved again for another year, given the situation that we've had. I don't see any indication, and maybe there's paperwork from the Alta Maria group to the city explaining why they should be allowed to continue this. But as we all know, there's no indication that Alta Maria group has managed this particular open street in any responsible way that's in line with what the language says, which is provide new ways for New Yorkers to enjoy cultural programming and build community. Now that's one of the essential points of an open street. This has not been happening on this street. They have turned over the opening and the closing to some, guys that just want to have a good time and get their exercise. But Alta Maria doesn't open and close the street. It's the guys that come to ride the skateboards that open and close the street. And when they arrive and that can be at 3 o'clock, that can be at 4 o'clock, that can be at whenever. So I'm just really surprised that the agency or the commissioner has determined, yeah, let's do this for another year. So I would suggest that the committee request from the agency why Alta Maria was granted the allowance where they say they've been informed that they have been approved. This is done. They are approved. We can comment. We can try to turn that back. But until we know why they've approved them, we're kind of spinning our wheels. Thank you. I'll let this go for now. Thanks.
Now, is there anybody else that wants to comment on Lafayette Street? There may be folks that want to comment on something else. Shall we ask?
Jane Gottlieb.
Hi. I didn't realize we were going street by street tonight. I thought this was sort of an overarching discussion of why open streets is dangerous, unsanitary, and unfair to residents. I live on an open street on Christopher. We live in a big building. It's mainly a residential street with a few restaurants and bars. Stonewall is there, as you all know.
We are addressing single streets, Jane, because that's the only way we can possibly maybe have some effect with some comments. So is that in the list, the street that you're talking about? Christopher?
I'm talking about Christopher between Waverly and 7th. Yes, I'll be brief. Last summer, we had a fire next door. The firefighters could not get to the building because of the barricades. It took them an extra 2 minutes to remove them. I don't know how that's okay. Our residents, many of them are elderly and cannot be dropped off in front of our building. As you know, vehicles are not allowed, so they have to traverse a very dangerous cobblestone. I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
And someone broke a leg. We have rodents, we have trash, we have unbearable noise. You know, this whole thing about, you know, kumbaya, the community getting together, it's not that. It's restaurants and bars. That's what it is. And I don't understand how after the pandemic, when we gave the restaurants a year, why we need to amplify this program when they're doing fine without it. We have tables in the street on Waverly.
Hey, Jane, I want to clarify something. There are open streets and then there are open restaurants. And the program for restaurants is going to be changed completely. And we are still waiting for the applications for permits for the new kinds of restaurants, and there will be hearings through the community board on that. Todd, did you want to say
She's
anything
talking about something totally different.
Yeah.
Christopher Street. Christopher Street has no access to any road bed.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, sir.
So Christopher Street has no access at all to any road bed dining. And so that's a unique open street. There are two in our community board that are similar to that. And just by means of disclosure, I'm a community volunteer helping on one of them, which is on Bleecker Street, you know, where overthrow boxing is there.
Restaurants. About that rat.
There's two people talking at once. I'm sorry, I can't.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah, she doesn't, that on that block, the restaurants will not have an opportunity to participate in any.
I'm thinking of it, you're right.
But they already are. I mean, they already are.
Are they?
We have tables in the street on Waverly, around the corner. In the street.
So that's
Jeffrey's restaurant. Are you saying there's no open restaurants on Christopher? Is that what you're saying?
No, the portion of Christopher Street, which is an open street, the regulations for that street would prohibit the building of any of
outdoor cafes,
what were sheds and what will now be road bed dining, whatever they, you know, you want to call them. But they're not allowed to have that from, you know, in the street there. So the open street allows them to set up starting at a particular time and remove everything at a particular time on whatever dates and times are allowed.
So I'm sorry, I don't understand. You're saying there is no outdoor dining on Christopher Street as of 2024?
No, what I said is that there is no outdoor dining without the open streets program on that particular block on Christopher Street.
But she's saying that there is an open.
But there is.
No, that's my point. You're
I'm sorry.
the open streets allows all the restaurants on Christopher Street to utilize the street bed so that they can put tables and chairs out. If there were no open streets program, there would be no utilization. of
Oh,
any-
I see. So yes, they can put tables in the street. And why is that? I'm just curious. Why is that? I mean, we're in it's a residential
It's a
block.
separate kind of system. I mean, you can have the open streets are for anything, it doesn't have to be restaurants. But what Carter is saying is that because the space is set aside, it allows for, but you would have to get, it's gonna change, okay?
I thought this meeting was about us commenting on why that is not working for us.
To apply for licenses. No, permit, I mean. Yeah.
Doesn't have to do with
Right.
dining out.
Exactly.
So if they have, I believe it's an operator who's willing to manage this with the three restaurants, I don't know, say, on there, they can close the street, they have somebody managing it, and it's for the
Oh,
restaurants.
right. They
As
did
part
that.
of the open street program, not part of the dining out.
Right, oh, okay,
program.
they're called open streets restaurants,
And
that's what
that's
it's
still-
called. But isn't that going to end as well?
You have to have
Yeah.
DOT representative, my understanding.
So
they-
Jackie,
Street program.
Jackie, are you there?
I'm there. Yeah, Jane.
Now,
Sorry, I'm having
are
internet
both
issues.
programs going to end? Both the open streets restaurants and the open restaurants?
So the temporary open restaurants program is moving to now the new permanent program, which is under the dining out umbrella.
What does that mean?
What's happening?
So that is and I will be honest, I have not been briefed on the specifics on that program, but those have different rules than what we're seeing now with the temporary program.
Okay, but now what about the open streets restaurants, which is the concern here? Will that also be ended?
So I believe open street restaurants aren't
because those are without permits too.
Because I think the categorizations are limited local access, full closures, and then full closures for schools.
I mean, our bus route is canceled from April to November. And I noticed that the restaurants way exceeded the time frame for when they were allowed to have the sheds and the outdoor dining. So that went into.
So they would be, so if it's a open street full closure, they would be allowed to use that space for
I guess
dining.
why? I guess, do the residents get a say in this? I mean, it just seems we canceled bus routes, limited access to buildings, or actually no access, fire trucks, at risk, of not reaching a fire. I mean, it all seems why. It's just 4 years of this going into 5. It's too much. We have 113 apartments in this one building alone. It's a lot of people who are
Okay. Well, I really want to clarify, because I really thought that all of these open restaurants, whether they were the open streets restaurants program or the plain old open restaurants program, was being folded into Dining Out New York. So Jackie, can you clarify that? You still really haven't.
Sure. So the open streets, like open street restaurants I think was absorbed into just a typical full closure open street. So a full closure, there are 3 types of open streets: limited local access and full closure. Full closure is the type of open street that does allow restaurants to set up tables and chairs and to have patrons, eating there or dining there, I should say.
So that's Christopher.
But local access allows tables and chairs still?
No, only full closure.
Yeah, which Christopher is, and we have, rats in broad daylight because of it, in addition to many other more serious problems. It just sounds like it's a done deal.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, the only thing, I'm just trying to see what streets people are having problems with You're having problems with Christopher between Waverly and Seventh.
Right.
Yeah, Susan, did you want to say something?
Ready to move to another street?
Yeah, and I think we have to move to another street. Yeah.
I'd like to move to Morton Street, please, where
And Morton Street, then, and what is the location there between?
Morton Street from 7th Avenue South to Bleecker Street. I'd like to speak strenuously against this for several reasons. Even in the height of the pandemic, the public service that was provided here was entirely questionable. It's a little tiny kind of dark street. There were no, people strolling down the street, enjoying themselves on a beautiful sunny day. There was nothing about it. It's just a little street that was basically taken over by one restaurant.
Which one? Belly?
The restaurant's out of business.
Well, there were two. There was a donut shop and a restaurant. The donut shop is now out of business, and the restaurant absolutely does not require roadbed dining. I mean, they colonized the roadbed. I say that this particular street not only does not create a service to the community, but it creates a disservice to the community because that particular street serves as a major traffic route from the West Side Highway over to the center of the village to Bleecker Street, and that people come right off the West Side Highway. That's a very important street there for traffic. And when that street is closed, of course, the traffic needs to just move around. There's no other place that can readily accommodate that particular flow of traffic, which means then that motorists are going kind of all over the neighborhood, creating more air pollution in the neighborhood and congesting already clogged other smaller streets. So from that point of view, it's a disservice to the neighborhood. So it's a negative, it's not a positive. I never understood it to begin with. And now as I'm reviewing all 13 documents here, I see that all the others are sponsored by bids or individual restaurants that are named or merchants associations, or they tie back to an entity who might actually be considered to take accountability of some sort for this situation. This particular one lists Cara JRCM LLC. What the hell is that?
That was Mad Morton. Mad Morton.
That was Mad Morton, okay. And so then
And the replacement restaurant, I will have to look up, but I believe that Donna might correct me, that they had agreed not to run an open street or to have their own tables and chairs on the street here. So there's
less reason
no
that.
longer a sponsor between November, December, when they reapplied to now.
Okay.
So that's the type of information I think that's
great.
Good feedback
Okay.
to share about the specific street.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carter. So even without that, there was no reason. And now there's nothing, there's no accountability here then.
So
There's nobody to issue
Right.
the letters to.
So these sort of issues maybe that if.
Like a ghost, like a ghost applicant.
Okay, so let's see what else.
There's someone online for this.
Online to talk about the same thing. Okay.
M. Petretti.
Hi, this is Mary. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Regarding, just a step back regarding Lafayette, that I forgot my point on that. So I'll just go to Mad Morton because I live nearby there. The restaurants, there's no oversight with open streets, period. Anywhere you go, it's been my experience, particularly when we had Cornelia Street, it was like the San Gennaro feast. And Morton Street, the Mad Morton and Lena, they set up their tables and chairs and blocked the entire sidewalks. night after night after night, whenever it was. closed. And then they spill out into the street as well. And there's nobody that really, it's just kind of a walk-through space. So it really becomes just an empty space that nobody really uses except that it comes through, but the residents have to put up with the noise and whatever for the outdoor dining. But also Bleecker Street can be quite a bottleneck, and people need escape routes, whether they're driving on their car or walking, but mostly with car traffic, because that's a major artery to go cross town to the east side. So that's why I feel Morton is a bad choice for open street designation. And is there anybody here to list the complaints? Other than,
I guess that's what we're looking for, but you know what, we have to move on.
good, thank you, Shirley.
Can we tell who is here for what at all? I guess.
Darlene Lutz? Yeah, Darlene, you should be able to speak.
Can I just say one thing about the Mad Morton space so that everybody knows? The new operator who's going in there signed stipulation saying that there will be no other outdoor area. They have the enclosed sidewalk cafe, but no other outdoor area used for commercial purposes, including any unenclosed sidewalk cafe and or roadbed seating, including any open streets, outdoor seating, and no exterior service of alcohol.
Wow.
Oh,
That's
that's a lot.
So then you're actually complying with what the people
Well,
want.
they haven't opened yet. It doesn't mean they can't come back to ask for that, but that's what they signed
They
as a
agreed.
method of operation now.
Right, so this is a truly bogus application.
Yes.
It's.
Well, you can just see. Did you say Darlene is next?
Yeah. Unmuted, but. Okay,
Darlene?
we'll go on to the next slide. Mickey McGee?
Thanks so much. And thank you, Shirley, for having this meeting. I was also really surprised to hear that Spring Street's open street that extends from Sullivan over to West Broadway in 2 different segments that are listed as separate open streets was approved. And I was really very, very surprised, and I'll tell you why. As is the case for many of these open streets, this was a restaurant open street that was initiated by Saint-Tropez. Piccolo Cucino was the second partner and Altesi was the third. There has never been any community programming in there, as you've been hearing about for, in many parts of the city with open streets. The restaurant open streets were converted. There was never community programming. It is inaccurate to call this a community benefit. It is not. But why I was surprised is that I had a very terrifying experience that was precipitated by this open street. And I spoke in July with Kate Shearer in the DOT office. I called Commissioner Pinker's office and spoke with Kate. And I shared this story. I'm sharing it with you now. I teach in the Bronx. I had an injury in the past year, so unfortunately I can no longer use the subway to get to the Bronx. That is hopefully going to being back on the subway will hopefully be in my future. I just had surgery. However, for a period of time, I had to take for-hire vehicles to the Bronx. I do not own a vehicle. One evening, I was being dispatched from a for-hire vehicle in front of my apartment building that I live in on Sullivan Street. I was also using a wheelie bag, like a wheeled suitcase to bring my computer and my books to the Bronx. I got out of the car and there was a traffic jam behind me, because there's a traffic jam whenever you're dispatched from a vehicle. When the cars are coming off of Spring Street, they're coming out of the Holland Tunnel and going up to Spring and coming over. They're coming off of the West Side Highway and going across Spring. and they are all looking at their GPSs that say they can go across Spring Street, across town, and then they get to Sullivan Street, and they are furious, and they are always furious, but some more so than others. The earlier speakers tonight, speaking about Mercer Street, I share their terror. I experienced the following. I got my bag out of the back of the car. Cars were honking. The car immediately behind the for-hire vehicle that I had exited decided he was going to do something really funny. He gunned his car, he drove 3 feet, and then he slammed on his brakes and started laughing. I did not find this funny. I was both terrified and enraged. I am coming home from teaching in the Bronx. I lived in this neighborhood for 32 years. I deserve to be able to safely exit a vehicle when I have been injured and am trying to continue to do my job. So I was very upset about this, and I spoke with Miss Kate Shearer. I heard nothing back from the DOT except, oh, we're really sorry to hear that happened to you. Gosh, really sorry. Okay, number of questions. I've been menaced on this block. I have a friend and colleague in the community who has been menaced while riding a bicycle on this block and the block to the north. There is no safety on my street now. The horns are honking continuously. Letters have been written to our council member. We now have a new council member, and we'll start a new campaign with our new council member. There's only so many times you can go to your council member about these problems on your block that have been caused by the DOT turning pandemic era programs into permanent blights on our neighborhoods. It was a terrifying experience. It was terrifying for the person who was bicycling up the block with horns honking behind him and someone menacing him with their vehicle. This is not safe. My questions, I have questions. What are the safety provisions? Has the DOT done any traffic studies? I have not seen a traffic study. Normally a traffic study, they lay down some wiring on the ground and they collect what's happening with the reflow of traffic. That did not appear to happen in my neighborhood. I don't watch every single day for it, but I've never seen it over here.
You're talking about on the open streets?
I'm talking about the redirected traffic that's pushed up Sullivan Street on that part of the open street. It's close, like this, you can't get across. The traffic that's coming eastbound that people think they're going to be able to go straight across Manhattan and go literally, it's a crosstown thoroughfare. People get diverted north. They're stuck on my block. They're honking and they're very angry. Similarly, on the southbound Thompson side, people get stuck in the Holland Tunnel traffic that goes down Thompson, and they can't get off. They can't exit across Spring out of the Holland Tunnel traffic, even if they don't need to be in the Holland Tunnel traffic.
You know something, I think we really have to move on. We've got a lot of other people.
Okay, I have one final thing to say about this.
So really kind of limiting it to what's going on the open street itself.
But this is from the open street.
Yeah, get it.
The open street is creating a hazardous situation, Shirley. It's very dangerous.
Vicky, we heard you. We got to move on. Thank you.
Darlene Lutz.
Get it. So who else?
Lisa Loosemore.
Hi, thank you. I also live on Christopher Street, but I'm actually want to talk about Waverly Place, which runs perpendicular to Christopher, which only exacerbates the problem of Christopher. That street was closed on the behest of 2 restaurants, Mirandy and Jeffrey's Grocery. Both of those restaurants have outdoor spaces and sidewalk spaces. So they actually have 3 spaces for their restaurants. Jeffrey's has sidewalk spaces on 2 streets, Christopher and Waverly. It is my understanding that you are only allowed to have sidewalk spaces on one side or be on one street. That street gets closed off, so it is also a fire hazard for us because the fire trucks can not only come down Christopher, they can now not come down Waverly as well. We have also seen people bring their own alcohol and stand on Waverly and create their own parties, having nothing to do with either one of those restaurants. I don't understand why we have 2 blocks closed off, 2 small blocks that bring a lot of people into the area. We have 2 open drug markets, one on Washington Square Park corner, one on 7th Avenue and Christopher, that bring a lot of crazy people into the neighborhood. We have had many meetings with the local precinct. It is a difficult neighborhood to begin with. Having the open streets has made it dangerous and really miserable to live there. I would really love for the DOT to come and spend a weekend in the neighborhood and see how those blocks operate.
Okay, thank you. Now it's Waverly, did you say between what and what?
Christopher and 7th Avenue.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you're talking about Christopher as well?
Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Jeffrey Rowland.
Hi, Jeffrey.
You can hear me, I take it.
Yes.
Hello? Yes, okay.
I hear you.
I also want to talk about Spring Street, but first I want to say, please, people in the room, when you speak, don't speak over one another, and please face the microphone. It's very hard to follow from here when there are more than one person speaking.
Spring Street. All right, Spring Street.
I am going to speak about Spring Street.
Go ahead.
And Spring Street I'm talking about because I, like Mickey, also I'm very concerned about the open street of Spring Street. And the reason why is this program is not living in a vacuum. You have the restaurants with their sheds that make the sidewalk impassable. You have Lotteray, the bakery, that has advertised well and sells cronuts and has a line that goes from their business all the way to Thompson Street, blocking the sidewalk. So the only place to walk is often in the street. And as the south side of Spring Street is blocked by both the construction at 182 Spring and the 3 restaurants, LTC and the Piccolo and the Saint-Tropez. Saint-Tropez moves on the open street, puts barriers out into the street to enclose their restaurant even further. So as you can't pass it on the open street, and you can't use it as a thing, and the only part of the avenue, the street that's left open is the bicycle lane, which is dangerous to walk in, and you can't use the north sidewalk because of Lotteray and the other restaurants, and they're narrow sidewalks as it is. I'm very conflicted. On the one hand, I need the open street to walk in. On the other hand, it's not safe to walk in. And you can't walk on the sidewalks because of the other program. So this is not in a vacuum. That is part and parcel of the whole program. And unless it is managed in a way that addresses other businesses, why, for example, should one type of business be allowed to have an open street, but not the retail shops? Does that mean we're going to allow the hatter or the cigar store or anything else to also set out tables into the streets? Because then we won't be able to walk in them at all. I just think that this needs to be looked at more comprehensively than it's been looked at. It's not working well. It is dangerous, basically, to walk during the daytime and the nighttime from Thompson Street to Sullivan Street. And if they're going to close Spring Street for an open street, then they better close it at 6th Avenue, because Mickey is right. It is absolutely a problem. They come across on Spring Street, they have nowhere to go, and they turn onto Sullivan and they back up. If they have to turn on 6th Avenue, it's far less of a problem because there is, in fact, a wider avenue for them to travel on. Then they can go up to Houston and go across town on that. But it's not working to just close off the one block.
I think what we keep on hearing is that DOT really should be studying the action on all of these streets. How many more do we have, Anthony?
2.
Okay, let's do our 2 and move on.
Jonathan Wiseman.
No, I'm going to actually bring up the point of in the meatpacking district, there's 3 blocks that are blocked off, and there's a couple of issues that maybe on the DOT could answer is basically who enforces the hours? Like, say, for example, the hours are from 2 to 10 p.m., but the bid goes out there and puts up the barricades at 12 p.m. in the afternoon. Who is responsible for the enforcement and abiding by the rules of the open street hours? That's one question. And I think Shirley did mention it very well and eloquently, is I think DOT really needs to look at each individual street and not just rubber stamp it, because in that neighborhood, we're going to be eliminating on the high volume tourist areas probably about 60 paid parking spots, of which the pressure of congestion and the pressure of parking is going to affect the West Village and even Chelsea. And also maybe looking at options of maybe opening up more parking spots, like maybe next to the Whitney Museum or across the street, or even looking at extending the light timing at 14th Street and 9th Avenue, because it's only 15 seconds. So it only
Nancy,
allows.
can you address the open streets, please?
That is part
We're
of,
not
I'm
talking
giving
about
you,
parking
Shirley,
tonight.
Shirley, I'm giving you what the problem is from the open streets, and I'm trying to present to you a solution, maybe to present to DOT, to alleviate the creation of congestion and problems in parking from the open street program, because it seems like it is very repetitive.
Okay. What happened?
Darlene Lutz.
Hi. Oh, I am alive. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Darlene Lutz.
Darlene, there you are. Yeah.
Good evening. Darlene Lutz, First Precinct Community Council, longtime resident of the southwest end of Soho. I am here to talk about Spring Street because I have data from the First Precinct about what a problem these two blocks on Spring Street between Sullivan and Thompson, and then Thompson and West Broadway, have caused with access to the roads by emergency vehicles. There's a major construction site at the corner of Thompson and Spring Street. It's also been, I believe Mickey covered the traffic issue, because we have traffic from an avenue, 6th Avenue, turning onto Spring Street. And then it has nowhere to go except up to up Sullivan, which is slammed on both sides with shanties and it's the one lane. There's also a bike lane on Spring Street that is barely usable. But we all know that the vehicles now, a bike lane, anything on two wheels qualifies as a bike. So there are motor vehicles zipping along that bike lane when it's closed. The south side of Spring Street is completely impassable, the sidewalk is, because of the restaurants there. As it's been, I'll reiterate that both of these open streets are managed by restaurants, and it's for their benefit. They expand out into they expand their seating twofold. I think Saint-Tropez probably has 4 times the capacity outside that they do inside, as does Piccolo and Altesi. So it's really not. It's dirty. It's filthy. It's filled with garbage. It's just not managed, except for when they want to have more seating for the restaurants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. So we have one more person.
James Southworth.
Hi there. My name is James Michael Southworth. I'm actually a member of CB5 and on the transportation committee over there. And I was going to speak on something else, but in reviewing this agenda, I'm a little shocked at what your committee is tasked with reviewing and how many open streets have been approved. And I just wanted to generally comment that I think this seems like a bad idea and very poorly thought out and going to cause a lot of problem for residents for I'm not sure what real gain. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll follow up with the district manager about what I wanted to speak about originally as well, but I don't envy your all tasks. I think this.
What are you saying? Are you saying that by pinpointing what people's problems are in open streets, you don't think it's a good idea?
No, I think in general, probably in general, the open streets entire program is a bad idea because it's way too broad and it's going to lead, I mean, the times are all overlapping. There's no way to have any enforcement, and it's going to lead to basically like a complete snarl of traffic and inability for people to navigate the district. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're through with that, right?
Are you taking Jonathan Wiseman again at all?
Oh, by the way, Jackie, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, so Jonathan did have an interesting question. He asked who enforces the hours. So would that have to be the sponsor, right?
So I believe we would work with the partner to make sure that the hours are being followed. So if there are any areas of concern, I would definitely recommend that they, like if it's in the CB2 district, I would recommend that they reach out to our office. Happy to drop in that number and let us know what locations they're seeing those issues with. And then we're happy to work with the open streets team to make sure that we reach out to the partners and speak to them and make sure that they're maintaining the hours as they're supposed to.
So it would be the partner, and DOT would have to, in a way, enforce it with the partner. Okay.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to speak.
Yeah.
So,
Carter, yeah.
The way we're addressing this as a community board, I don't think is particularly great, because what we're not doing is help solve issues. And we've heard a lot of issues here. Some can be addressed, some
talk
cannot.
about that in business session. No, we will talk about.
No, I'm allowed to comment at this time, and yes, you are. That's what public comment is.
We
So, but I'm just gonna.
the whole board. We'll get back to the board discussing it.
But I'm speaking here to the public, and you're allowed to comment, Shirley. There's not questions
You're
only.
as a member of the public, not a member of the board?
Yes, that's what I'm,
Okay,
and
go
I
ahead.
mentioned before.
Go ahead, Carter. Go ahead. Go right ahead.
Has its own patina, and I think it's a disservice not to work through some of these issues, because some can be dramatically improved and some are not a good idea. And I think that we need to tailor these really individually, and then some also need to have discussions about how it's managed, because there's clearly some dramatic issues that happen in each one. Okay, but I'm gonna recuse from voting on this because I have experience in doing this, and I don't think anybody sitting at this table is a part of doing this. And this is a one-on-one with neighbors, and that's what we're not fostering, that discussion in each of these situations. And that's very important to do.
Yeah, but you're
because
talking
that's how.
about doing what we should do and say, and that's in business session.
And this could be part of
We
the
have very good
resolve.
recommendations there, but that's what we concluded. Okay.
Carter, you're not.
Is there anyone else? No.
You have to speak.
I'm just.
Yeah.
If Jonathan is still on here, I am the residential representative on the meatpacking bid, not the community board representative. When I saw, and I live right there, so I'm very aware of the closed streets. When I saw the hours and the amount of street closures they had listed, I called them and spoke with them today. And they are not intending to close Gansevoort Street from Hudson Street to 10th Avenue. And they will not be closing the other streets to the extent that they have the hours down. It'll be less than last year, which was less than the year before, is what I was told. They have it in there for Gansevoort Street to use for some of the events that they do. I'm not sure the specifics of that. I know it's for the movie screenings, maybe when they do the high school fashion show, if they're doing that again or something, but that's what it's for. That said, if they were closing everything they had closing, and to Carter's point, this would be a major traffic problem. We have not solved the problem with the light at 9th Avenue or 14th Street, but I'm just saying, but I know that, but for Carter's point, there should be a discussion, because I would be sitting here tonight. They would not be here had I not called them, and I was prepared to come with my traffic map so that all of you would understand what would happen to the traffic flow in Meatpacking if this happened. So I'm just making this point so that maybe Jonathan can calm down, but maybe also all of you who don't go to Meatpacking all the time, as one example, understand what these closures do and how that might be impacting. I don't know the other districts, so that's what I'm
Okay, but that we'll discuss in the
But I do.
resolution, okay? And that's interesting, by the way, about what the meatpacking district is doing. Okay, we're moving on.
Okay, so
to
this
the
should be,
next
this should be
item
a breath of fresh air.
on the agenda. Okay, I will say what it is. It's a request to extend the 6th Avenue bicycle lane. We have one right now from 8th Avenue and Greenwich Avenue up to 14th. For years, we have been asking for it to be extended south as far as Canal. So that's still on our budget requests. Now, Janet, there's a group, right, which is suggesting that perhaps at least for starters, we can extend it a little further south, which may be effective, and that's what Janet is going to tell us. So it might be the 3rd, or it might be to Bleecker, right?
Yeah, and I'm
Third
gonna
or
actually
Bleecker.
figure out, Anthony's gonna have to share my screen. So this is what I want to show. We have tech support.
Okay, so while Anthony is doing that, let me tell you what my feeling is, and you can disagree if you want. If we're going to do a resolution on the open streets, I thought that, for one, at least we would pinpoint the specific instances that have been brought up. And then talking it, like Carter was saying, in more of a broader picture as to what we have observed from the input tonight. That, for one thing, my impression is that DOT really has to go out and take a look at what's going on. So that's one of my feelings. In addition, what Donna was saying in terms of looking at what's going on the open streets and looking in terms of their impact on the whole operation of the street. That's what you're saying, right? So it's what's going on the open streets. And then in terms of impact
Okay, so
of the operation. Yeah, operation on other streets, which would be traffic.
Is it whiteboard or PowerPoint?
Oh, it's PowerPoint.
Traffic.
I'm sorry, guys, that this is not going.
It's not happening. Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to just, we can calendar, we got plenty of other things.
All right, we got it. So,
okay.
We'll go to opening. So as Shirley said, we have requested 6th Avenue to come from Church Street all the way to Greenwich, but there's all these conflicts that seem to happen with the, Ben and I worked on it together all the way. This is Ken Listman over there.
Okay.
So this just seems like the street is getting milled and there's a piece of street which, okay. So we'll get to the maps, but why now? There's a missing link. 3rd Street is nearly defined as a crosstown lane and dead ends into 6th Avenue. You'll see through pictures that there's demand. It's a high crash stretch between West 3rd and 6th Avenue. Very active city bikes, perfectly wide. There's not an issue with geometry. It looks to be the same width as further north. And the street is currently being remilled, and I don't know how quickly DOT can change plans to paint, but it's milled, it hasn't been paved, it hasn't been marked. So it seems like an opportunity to fix a link, which will get kind of a lot of bang for the buck. So here I just, for those who don't know the stretch, well, I just took a little walk. This was 3 minutes. I went from Greenwich Street and walked south. On the right side is where the lane currently starts on Greenwich. And then I turned to look down, and that's 6th Avenue. There was a cyclist coming. I walked down the street. There was another cyclist coming. Then I walked down the street again, and then there was like this other person coming. You see the person there on the right. And then you keep walking, and this is the 3rd Street, and you see the bikes coming out at 3rd Street. And then, although we only requested to 3rd Street, when Ben and I started studying this, it did seem to make sense to go down to Bleecker because you really fix a link. And this is a bike station, city bike station, which is super busy, and there's a street bike. So looking at the grid, so you see, it's sort of glaring here, but this is 3rd and 4th Street just going south of the park, and this, unlike 9th Street, which starts further west, and then back to 10th Street, which does go over the 3rd and 4th, hit the river, and then it's so weird because there's just that one little missing link there that would connect Bleecker up to 6th Avenue. You all see what I'm talking about? I'm talking about this little stretch right.
I think if you move the pointer, it'll show up.
Sorry. I thought it would. For some reason, my pointer is not doing that. But I think everybody in the room, does everybody see what I'm identifying there? So it's just that little stretch right there that seems to be missing. And then this is actually good because it's less dense, and you see where it's yellow. And this is city bike usage, and that's the wider area, but when you zoom into this area, there's 10,000. Is that on a daily basis?
No,
March 2024. So that city bike station right there off of 6th Avenue is very popular, and it runs east. So people come up, and then where they're supposed to go, they go up 6th. I don't know why my little marker is here. That's probably because fine. And then this is crash data. On the left are the bike collisions, and on the right are the pedestrian collisions. And you can see, sorry, those of you on Zoom. So there are actually more crashes here, pedestrian collisions along 6th Avenue. This is Bleecker Street. This right here is this is West 4th Street. That's Washington, and then it's up in Greenwich. And the size of the dots reflects the crashes, but there's more activity here than there.
And I think we can clarify, this is from March 2020 to March 2020.
So when you mean crashes, you mean with vehicles?
Injured. Well, on the left, it's bike collisions, and on the right, it's pedestrian collisions, and that's the arrow.
They're injuries as results of
and then, oops.
Excuse me one second, just a quick question. So pedestrian collisions, that chart, that map, doesn't distinguish between bicycles and automobile collisions, correct?
The source, it's injuries as a result of, so it doesn't necessarily distinguish.
So it's not really pertinent necessarily to this.
Not necessarily bicycles.
It's not necessarily bicycles colliding with pedestrian injuries from whatever.
So it could be from a car.
It could be from a car.
That's my question, yes.
And what about bicycles? How do they figure in there? Because I think that's what you're aiming.
Well,
for,
both,
right?
because if I go back to those pictures, I mean, Sixth Avenue right there is super wide. And so by putting in the bike lane, not only do we make it safer for the cyclists, but of course we shorten the crossing distance and have an opportunity to kind of rein in that stretch of the road. So bike infrastructure typically also makes it safer for pedestrians.
Yeah, so the bike lane narrows the crossing.
Yeah.
Where is that at? What crossing?
Well, so we were originally, I can share with you, these little dots are from Greenwich, where Sixth Avenue, you can see they're a little bigger further south than they are further north where you actually have the bike lane. So these pedestrian incidences run down Sixth Avenue, really all the way to Bleecker Street.
So on the southern crossings.
Yeah.
All the way down. Okay.
So, going back to this map here, so it's just this is like, it's like a glaring little hole here. And we had just requested to take Sixth Avenue down to Third because Third Street dead ends, if you can't go anywhere. But if the committee would consider it, we feel like you get more bang, just go down to Bleecker Street and then you really connected this segment nicely. And as Shirley said, we have asked for more before, but the going further south gets really complicated with the bridge and then with the tunnel traffic.
So the space right now, is that standing to Sixth Avenue?
This little thing here is this map. This is the bike network map. And it just shows that there's this gap.
And that is the continuation of Sixth Avenue.
Yeah, right up here is Sixth
The
Avenue.
little opening is really an opening for the absence of the bike lane. Okay.
Right.
Right.
Street does it start on, the Sixth Avenue?
It starts at Greenwich. It starts on Greenwich. And so there it is.
Greenwich Avenue?
Greenwich Avenue. So there it is on the right. And then I just turn around and look south and that's the road that's south. Which is really wide. So I don't know if DOT can talk to us about it, but it seems that it wouldn't be complicated.
So, and you're feeling that at least there's this opportunity because they're milling and paving.
Right, because the road right now is all milled up, it's chopped up. So if they could amend their painting schedule, they could do this, this spring. Ben, do you have
So
anything?
are they doing it now? Are they, or
Yeah.
do we have, suppose we did do a resolution, would it be in time for?
Yes, we can ask DOT, because if you look at the road now, it's all chopped up. There's no markings on it. It's getting ready to be repaved.
I see, so that won't be for, say, the next month or so.
I'd like to point out that there's a note in the chat from Nicole Barth saying that Council Member Botcher has written a letter to the commissioner requesting the extension of Sixth Avenue bike lane from Lispenard to Ruth Wittenberg Triangle. And that they're asking.
From where?
From Lispenard to Ruth Wittenberg Triangle, and that Council Member Botcher is asking other electeds to sign on. So I think that's an important thing to notice. Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole.
So maybe we should ask for more. Should I go back to the map here?
So we're requesting down to Lispenard, right? Which is in Tribeca.
Tribeca.
Well, maybe we could phrase it so that we could say that the council member is requesting that. And that we would like to see this at least being started right now.
Because there's a particular opportunity.
Yeah, because of the opportunity.
Yeah, because that's the road.
So that is really interesting. So gradually they're going to get the Canal Street in 10 years from now.
Yeah, Lispenard is pretty far
So
south.
interesting.
This is the normal west.
Oh, Shirley, if I could just quickly make a comment. Kate had actually asked me to share that our bike team is working on a proposal that would extend the bike lane from Lispenard to West 8th Street, and they're looking to share it with the CB in the near future. So right now we are currently working on that proposal.
That Jackie again? Oh.
Yes.
Oh, Really?
Right, so is there any way to expedite this while, and get this done while the road is chopped up?
So I would have to check in with the team just because I'm not too sure, like I mentioned, what I was told is that they are working on the proposal. And of course, they will work with the board to schedule that. But to be honest, I'm not sure where the proposal currently stands, if it's in its early drafts or if it's, about ready for us to call you and ask to be on the main
Okay, so in
committee.
other words, when you are ready, you would want to bring it to us to review, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it probably won't be this.
So the question is would there be any opportunity to just get it moving a little bit by us asking for this extension through marking, right? Because it would just be through markings.
Right. I mean, just to do it, it's an opportunity, and if they're extending the other one, that might not come to us till next year. So this is sort of a no-brainer. At least it appears to be.
Well, the question is whether we should be asking for that. There would be harm, I guess, but would there be any opportunity? Jackie, do you know?
So I will say, working with the borough planners on other special improvement projects, there is typically a notification period that we have to legally follow. So if we have to present to the board, I believe it was 45 days, or I forget the exact details, but it's X amount of days before we actually implement something. And that is a legal requirement that we have to follow. So I'm not sure if we would, in this instance, be able to put those markings down and implement a bike lane.
What's your schedule for repaving the street and repainting it?
So typically, for repaving, it could be anywhere up until I think it's 8 weeks, and that's also to allow for utility work to be done while the road has been milled.
So that gives that 60 days. So if you wanted to, it's not inconceivable that you could change the paint schedule and get it presented to us before you finish the work.
I think that would be dependent on what the other projects for the bike unit are. But if you guys want to bring those comments back, I'm happy to take that to the team and see what is possible.
So maybe it's just worth at least recommending. Okay.
Can you just clarify though, there are many different ways to do this, right? Is this simply parking where it is adjacent to, I mean, is somebody regulated by a bike here?
Protected bike lane.
Is it a protected bike lane? Is it just simply, even it would be helpful with just the bike symbol? Anything would dramatically improve the West Third to Greenwich. Anything. It is such an uncomfortable place to ride. And it's 2 bike lanes that are for 3. Because it's West Third and then it starts north of 8th and then up Greenwich. Greenwich doesn't have a bike lane, but I think it's painted if I remember correctly.
Yes, kind of a bike route.
But there's nothing there. And I just wonder, were there ever bike symbols on 6th Avenue?
I've never seen them, no.
Even a shared road? I mean, that's what I'm just.
But that's.
Yeah, because that's anything is a dramatic.
Right.
But because there's a space.
Jackie, are you talking about a protected bike lane all the way down to Lispenard?
So that was unclear to me. I was just told that it was a proposal to extend the bike lane. It wasn't made clear which type of bike lane it would be.
I mean, I think we should ask.
Like what we asked for.
I think we should ask for a parking protected bike lane because there's enough room.
Yeah. Okay.
It's parking protected like.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So anything else, John? Because we'll just move on. These folks from Open Plans have been waiting forever.
There's a comment.
What?
Darlene Lutz has a comment.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yes.
Darlene? I think her mic's not working.
Was it Darlene?
Yeah, Darlene, you should be able to speak.
Sometimes we can't get her for some reason. Unmute yourself, Darlene.
She was having mic problems earlier.
Yeah, right, right.
All right.
Anybody on the committee? I know I didn't ask, besides Janet. Anyway?
It's nice.
Okay.
Ben Listman is.
Ben Listman, CB2 resident.
And that's what you said, just wanted to see if we could work with that with this. And I'm just
Yeah, I mean,
You do a newsletter, right?
yeah, that's separate. I'm an urban planner. So. Some mapping and actually some bike industry for planning before. Yeah, in Jersey. So
We do a transportation newsletter. Like a view, something like that, right? Okay.
So I asked him.
So he has so much expertise. Yeah.
Yeah, and he.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so should we move on finally to the last item on the agenda, which is a presentation by Open Plans. Jackson, are you with us? We have Jackson Shabbat here tonight. I hope I'm not slaughtering your last name, Jackson. And this we really, Open Plans gives a presentation about making streets more comfortable and safe for folks. And we thought it would be a good idea to listen to what they have to say. And maybe we'll learn about some new techniques. So you ready, Jackson?
Sure am. Thank you, Shirley. I'm going to share my screen here and put this in view for full. And Shirley, you did butcher my last name, but I shall forgive you. It is Thibault.
Oh, in the French way. Okay.
Yes, French Canadian, if we're being technical, but.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so is this full screen for you all?
No, it's not. It's the regular view.
That's interesting. Okay, I just transferred on my computer. How's that though? Oh wait, here we go. Resume share. It's letting me click on the resume share, but it's not going to full screen. Is it still partial screen for you?
You should unshare and then do it again. Then you should be able to select it.
Okay. So I'm imagining it's still the partial share. Is that correct?
Yeah, still the regular one.
Okay.
So we can't do anything from our side, huh?
How about that? So it says paused. Why is it paused? All right, well, let me back out and we'll just go for it as is. Okay.
Now we have the full screen.
Bellissimo. Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Jackson Chabot. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Organizing at Open Plans. I'll tell you a little bit more about who we are in just a moment here. But as Shirley prefaced, I'm here this evening to give a brief presentation and have a Q&A if you desire about safe, livable, and community-friendly streets. So I think it's a very timely discussion based on all of the conversations that you've had this evening and thinking about the ways that your streets are allocated, the space on the streets is allocated, whether that's a loading zone or a bike lane or an open street, and thinking about what that looks like. So like I said, at Open Plans, we believe that every New Yorker should have access to safe and joyful public spaces. We work to transform how people experience those public spaces. So really focusing on that they're safe and that they're joyful. And these are a few ways that we do it. But like I said, tonight's just a purely educational presentation. So I want you to consider the potential of New York City streets. I want you to think, what is a street that you've gone to, whether you have visited across New York City, whether you've been on vacation in the United States, or maybe you've been on vacation internationally. What do you think of when you think of these streets? Oftentimes it's places where there are not a lot of vehicles or there's just deliveries only. They're not places like 6th Avenue are at the moment, as Janet was just showing on the pictures. which are effectively traffic sewers for our city. We know in New York City that our streets and sidewalks are our backyards, are our front yards for most New Yorkers. We don't have a backyard, we don't have a front yard. These places, our stoops, our sidewalks are places where we greet neighbors, where we have block parties, where we sit on our stoops. They're places where children could play, where commerce could happen, and my personal favorite, where people watching happen. So I want you to consider that potential throughout the presentation this evening, because a lot of what I heard earlier on tonight really focused on the negative of what was wrong with the presentations or what was detracting from it. I want you to consider the positive. What do you believe in? What would you like to see more of in your city? And so when we think about a livable street, for us as open plans, we think about streets that prioritize people. And that could look many different ways depending on the local context. But some of the things that we consider are around mobility, space for connection, space for play, space for deliveries. And so I'll walk through some of the things specifically at the curb, which I think has been a focal point of the conversation tonight, of some of the things that I would encourage you to consider as you can think about a safe and joyful and connected public space in your neighborhood. So some of the goals that we consider, like I have here on the right, are about enhancing quality of life, potentially building upon climate resiliency, and then, like I said, the safe and joyful public space. So when we consider this, some of the ingredients that we're considering are around accessible transportation. So this could mean walking, biking, but it also could mean taking and having elevators or escalators at different subway stations. We think about walkable neighborhoods. We think about ensuring that there's smooth pavement, for example. Think about having curb cuts so that neighbors in wheelchairs or mobility devices, or perhaps with strollers, can use the curb. And that's often just not the case across New York City. We think about green spaces and spaces for parks and getting to those spaces. In the district, perhaps this means getting safely to and from the waterfront and the West Side Highway if you want to walk or bike, or you just want to enjoy the sunset. This often also means potentially clean air and water. And we see that across the city, transportation is the second leading cause of emissions after buildings. And so some of the campaigns that we focus on as open plans, which I'm happy to answer any questions about later on, are here on the screen. But I want to highlight just two of them, just not tonight, around curbside reform and around open streets specifically for schools. And so when we think about curbside reform, we need to reimagine the way we use our curb. Historically, and even still today, about 97% of our curb across the city is used for free parking. And so we know that there could be so many other things as we consider what a right size and what a balanced algorithm or a right size appropriation of public space looks like across different neighborhoods, across different blocks, and even down to a very granular level of building by building. And so some of the things that I would encourage you all to think about as you have these conversations, some of which you've had this evening and potentially going forward, are around bus lanes, are around trash containerization, are around neighborhood loading zones, are around outdoor dining, are around bioswales, and really thinking about what the proper mix is for you all and thinking through what this looks like I said, on a district level basis, as a block level basis, as well as all along corridors. And I know you all voted on and passed your daylighting resolution at the Transportation Committee here, as well as at the full board. And so just to share a bit about a look inside for daylighting, we believe this is a really important issue across the city, and seeing as this affects drivers, people walking, as well as people biking, and really ensuring that people can see each other as they're moving through the intersections, which are the spaces of the most conflict. And so when you get to the intersection, if you're driving, you think, oh my gosh, I have to pull through the crosswalk just to see the car that's coming across the way, or to see the pedestrian, or to see the cyclist. If you're the pedestrian, you have to poke your head around a really large vehicle that might be double parked in the intersection. It really creates a hazardous and chaotic situation for everyone. So I'd encourage you all to think really strategically about your intersections. Too many across the city and across the district are really wide. And so there's not enough signal timing for people that are older and maybe have mobility needs that need a little bit extra time, in addition to the space that's needed. Our office is in Tribeca, and I love seeing Janet's presentation about the bike lanes, because when I bike from our office in Tribeca up to the Whitney Museum, I often bike on that unprotected patch of 6th Avenue. And to be quite frank, it's quite treacherous and chaotic. So I'm a personal fan of the proposal there, and I would strongly suggest a protected bike lane. But highlighting these intersections is really crucial here, especially what we see on the bottom left photo. This is on Berry Street in North Brooklyn, which is an open street that's been improved by the Department of Transportation with a robust set of treatments. And so you'll see specifically here that they've added bike corrals and other things at the intersection to prevent people from parking there. Because we see, if it's not, that the NYPD will park there egregiously, that we see that FedEx, UPS, and other delivery trucks will park there, amongst others. And we know that this space could be used both for safety or for bike parking, for example, city bike stations, even, as well as in the bottom middle photo here, could be used for things like rainwater infrastructure. If there's ever flooding in the district, this could be a great way to collaborate and think about what are the ways that we can catch water before sewers overflow, before there's combined sewer overflow into the river, or maybe some of your basements flood when there's a heavy rain, just kind of like my basement did for one of those recent rainstorms. So with that, I'll shift over to our open streets for schools. And you all have talked a lot about open streets tonight, but this is specifically as a part of the DOT's program for schools. And here's a smattering, a look at 3 different examples from across the globe of different ways that people do it. We know that the pickup and drop off moment in the morning and the afternoon is the most dangerous time for students. This is coincides often with rush hour, and is really a time and a space where our youngest New Yorkers are at their most vulnerable point as people are trying to get to the office or trying to move across town. So we believe that Open Streets for Schools is a wonderful program that really helps keep children safe by creating this space specifically of pick up and drop off, or throughout the day if they don't have a play yard or they don't have a gymnasium, or maybe they're a co-located school. So you'll see here, this is an example from how Paris has created a livable street, in our opinion, as well as one from London up above. And then this last photo on the bottom right is from Jackson Heights and the 34th Avenue open street that has several schools along their corridor. So like I said, when we see that schools are in session, there are significantly higher rates of traffic crashes and injuries. And this is particularly true in areas where there's predominantly non-white school districts, where there's 43% more dangerous than primarily white schools. So we know that this has a significant impact on equity. We know this has a significant impact on our youngest New Yorkers. But the fact of the matter is, this is good for all people and keeps everyone safe as they're moving throughout the city. And it's just a little bit less chaotic in the morning for people walking. So we'd love to get involved. If you're interested, you can scan the QR code. Happy to share my contact information. Shirley has my email, but I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions for you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. So anybody got any questions?
No.
Nope.
Everything's good.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, you know what?
That's a nice summary.
Section. Dolly Gillis.
Oh, I
does.
have a question.
Oh, Lois has a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
please explain again about did you say, you didn't say rain barrels, but I know you mentioned something about
Totally.
prevention.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So the bottom middle photo here is an example of a rain garden, also at times known as a bioswale. And so you'll see across the city that typically this is done in collaboration with the Department of Environmental Protection and the Department of Transportation, since it's in the street, but it's sort of a different purviews. So might be good to get a briefing from the relevant agencies on where it's appropriate. But we see with this example here that when the water is running off of a street, the water catches in the basin. And even below this, what you can't see is there's a massive holding tank. So this could hold up to thousands of gallons of water when we have cloudburst storms and lots of rainwater. And then it would hold there until it dissipates, rather than just running off and clogging up the sewers, clogging up and overflowing the sewers and spilling directly into the Hudson River, for example. But this is just one sort of treatment that we think is really a great potential use at the intersection, adds a little bit more greenery, and definitely serves a very hardy climate purpose as well.
So would this take underground construction to create this swell? Well, a bioswale is like with the trees, that goes in there. But
yeah, so the catchment area,
Yeah.
depending on depending on the implementation of, is my understanding, as you can see in this photo here, there's the cutout with the tar here. So I'm sure they did some underground construction, but I'm sure that also depends on a case by case basis, depending on what they're implementing. And like you said, a bioswale potentially being a little bit different from what they've done here. But that's a more technical question, I think, for the agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
You said somebody, well, I guess has a question.
Jonathan Wiseman. Jonathan?
Jonathan?
As always, and thank you, the board also. Just Jackson, I just wanted to kind of, just a comment. You know, everything that was brought up tonight about the open street program was really not negative. It was actually a reality of what happens and the consequences of it. So I would just say maybe in the future, just realize that there are consequences to closing streets and pressures on certain neighborhoods. And I think I didn't really see that in your presentation. So I'm trying to figure out, maybe, is that something that you guys even looked at or considered in your proposal? I mean, I don't see that really where it's listed in the presentation.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate the comment and the question here. You know, I speak with open streets operators who, as Carter pointed out, do this work on a day in and day out basis across the city. And so I have a very well-versed understanding of different challenges, as you all have pointed out tonight. You know, what I was emphasizing and what I'd emphasize again here is that I encourage you all to focus on the solutions as you consider the merits of these different open streets and the, you know, what this means for your community, for you as neighbors, and what this looks like. I'm wholeheartedly enthusiastic about the program. Also wholeheartedly understand that there are different challenges and different constraints to work through on different open street spaces. But, you know, as an organization and individually, I don't think that that's a reason to take them away. I think that's a reason to come together as neighbors and think from a solutions-oriented perspective about the ways that these could work for everyone, whether that's a neighbor, a business, or someone who's just passing by. And so that's the point that I just would reemphasize here. I don't live in the neighborhood, but like I said, I work in Tribeca. I'm a frequent cyclist through the neighborhood. I'm very well versed with the different open streets, including the Lafayette one, the Spring Street one, among others. I've seen these on multiple occasions. And so I think that what I would, again, just reemphasize is looking at this from a solutions-oriented perspective, because a lot of people brought up great concerns tonight, but I didn't hear a lot of solutions. And so as Carter was pointing out, I would encourage you all to think really wholeheartedly and significantly from a solutions-based perspective.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to say, ask, whatever? Okay, this is
Just one quick thing. Listen, I think what you're representing is really great. I would just ask that you not be quite so facile in kind of criticizing a non-solutions based point of view, when in fact what our mandate tonight was regarding open spaces was 13 specific streets and 13 specific applications, not the entire concept of open streets or how we might, in fact, like to actually see the open spaces. We have not been invited into that conversation, which I think might very well be something we might want to include in our resolution. But please don't misunderstand and think that just because people objected to certain particular streets, that there is some sort of bias against a more equitable use of public space. And please understand that what we are called upon to do here tonight is to comment specifically on these 13 applications, or 17, or however many, which in fact have been presented to us as fait accompli. So, you know, I think we all need to work together.
That's well said. Okay.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
I just wanted to see if we could roll back to the, I think it was the last slide, the one that had to do with the schools.
This one or the previous one?
That one.
Okay.
Okay.
Was there a question on it, or I wasn't?
No, I just wanted to check out some of the statistics that you had put up. It just went by really quick and I didn't read, but thank you.
Totally. Yeah, and if you're interested, I'm happy to share some links afterwards with some of the data sources here as well, and some relevant articles as well.
Okay. Anybody else?
Laura Tenenbaum.
Oh, Laura, okay. Got another question for you, Jackson.
Hi, I kind of like the idea of applying this to schools. Especially for the younger children as are shown in this. I just wish that sometimes the presenters would target it to what we have in reality in our communities. And maybe, because we've seen time after time looking at what looks like a non-Manhattan or definitely not Community Board 2 related example. And we don't really, and part of the problem, I think I said it before, is that everything is one size fits all. Open Plans has some great ideas. And then they have some that really don't work for our community. Open Restaurants was one of their major pushes. The Open Streets idea, as we heard, can work. But it doesn't work in a lot of places. Solution for Lafayette Street is give us back our plaza. We'll have a community open space right where we used to have one. We've been asking for that now for a decade. We don't have it yet. And it's a sadness and it's a bitterness that we have lost the space that we worked hard to get. Bioswales, one of my big things. I was told that unfortunately we can't have them in our part of Manhattan. I hope that proves not true, but just for the community board to keep the idea in mind, it takes care of rainwater, it gives us green things, and it's a great use of our curb spaces instead of restaurants and cars. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Laura, and I completely agree. I think the bioswales are a tremendous aspect. So I'd love to hear more about why or why not they could work in the district, but I think wherever they could work, I think they're a phenomenal inclusion for our New York City streetscape.
Anybody else? Gone? Okay, thank you, Jackson.
Thanks,
And-
everyone. Have a great evening.
Okay, we will now go into business session. And so back to the first item, which was the request for the
Such a long time.
loading zone. So let's hear what you have to say about it.
I mean, I don't think there's any inherent problem with it. You know, it seems as if there's a building and that one space that can serve 50 people or more because it's available for the entire block is more effective than a parking space. The issue is that it's already no parking 8 to 6, so.
Whether you want to do it anytime.
Well, you know, because evening, I guess weekends is when it gets really crowded and the double parking's an issue.
Yeah, anybody else? Yeah, Lois.
I remember we had this conversation about loading, I think it was maybe, it started with West 12th Street, and the apartment house wanted to have maybe it was no parking or loading zone. I remember this before COVID, and we were in NYU. And
you have a big memory.
I remember this distinctly. And the objection that I had and some other people had was that if this building wants this space, say it's 30 feet, how large is a car? 30 feet? A car.
How long is it?
It's not 30 feet. 20 feet, 12 feet. 12 parking spaces.
Why can't some other building have that, and another building have that, and another building have that, and then another? And I remember this conversation. And then this was mute because we went to the shacks. So we just, you know.
What is wrong with a large residential building?
We had this discussion before, because we have many large apartment houses, and if one wants one, the other one.
And is there something inherently wrong with that? Is that not a better?
Yes, because that will take away free parking. And when we have the shacks, it takes away free parking, and it's not about cars or congestion pricing. It's about a convenience to park your car and go to a store or go to a restaurant or to go and visit your relatives.
Well, actually, the city is moving more and more away.
Away,
And
yes.
also, in our neighborhood, 85% of us don't own cars, so we don't get that free bill.
That's what you think. They have secret cars.
The secret thought, they may, well, that's even
That may,
worse.
they may, they're not paying their state tax.
Well, if you're talking about having loading, it isn't just one building. Evidently, they have to do it for the whole block or half the block. So that would be more of an accommodation for more than just one building.
I just don't think that it's.
What I don't understand, and I guess I should have asked Jackie, is the city is supposed to be having a neighborhood loading zone program. And I asked them months and months, maybe a year ago, to please come and tell us what it's about. And they still haven't really gotten around to it. And they don't seem to be developing.
Are they doing it here?
It's there. It's been there for a long
What,
time.
neighborhood
And
loading zone?
I think
Where?
it's exactly what the.
Oh, that's part of the,
Yeah, I
that's
know.
part of the neighborhood loading zone
Ones that
program.
have A
Daytime.
program with a little sign that said neighborhood loading zones.
It's literally when you leave the meeting, you go to Mercer Street on the north side of Bleecker.
Yeah.
There is a new loading zone.
Is it an official neighborhood loading zone with the sign?
Yeah.
Right in that area?
Well, this is just right here, and it's in front of the two monster buildings, 77 Bleecker, 88 Bleecker, which have, 500 or 600 units in them, which is not 22 units, this building is 22 units. And they also have commercial parking on Broadway. It's near, this is what was interesting when your expert, or when the traffic study person was coming in, they specifically identified Soho and NoHo's old parking regulations, which are overlays in a manufacturing district. There is no issue for most of these areas that we have in the rest of CB2 as far as deliveries, et cetera, because there is ample options for commercial activities.
Right.
And even the regulations here for dropping off, everything's there in the peak periods where I just speak from a slightly different area. It's the balance of the use of the street between the businesses, residents. There's a time where everything can happen, which is totally different from the rest of our community board. There's options for everybody in the business. And there's a hydrant in front of this building as well.
That's right.
Which is right there. And so it just strikes me that this is more of the enforcement side, this particular spot. And there are other buildings, which I think to Janet's point are very well served by these types of things. But to compare this to a hotel loading zone, which is what they were doing, I think is a bit of a disservice when people coming in and out all the time. And it's just, I think Susan had said something during, it's complicated because if we start with this, these are not large buildings by New York
22
City
units.
Right.
standards, and they have so many access options, right? I just hate to see this as something that we say.
Yeah, it's a sort of difficult thing. I'm amazed what you're saying about the neighborhood loading zone, because we had asked and we never told anything. And if there actually is one, well, more power to them.
I mean,
Interesting. So
I don't know how rigid they are, they have it Monday through Saturday, should it be 7 days a week? I mean, I think we get Amazon, my building is like package central every day of the week store. And I think deliveries happen on Sundays now, yes, right? So maybe they should I don't know, should we evaluate having it be 7 days a week? Because the weekends are rather than just Monday through Saturday.
Well, that's what they were asking for, was any time.
Well, they wanted 24 hours.
Yeah.
So So
Yeah.
I'm saying, do we just recommend that they extend it so it's 7 days a week? And is that a better,
You mean 7
Rule.
days, 8 to 6?
I'm just, you know,
I'll give you an example of the last time that this committee asked for parking regulation on the street. My street where I live on the north side, which is no standing, 6 p.m. I think it's 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. something along those lines. Full of parked cars all day long. And it's metered parking during the day. And I just put that in perspective, the issue here, or it's non-enforcement of the regulations that is creating a larger issue here than it is.
Which is very little that we can do anything
And
about.
that's, if we're going to have discussion about including zones, realistically, have them. I'm not sure this would be someplace where start the discussion and with the characteristic of having already a fire hydrant in front of the building and some of the other things, it's a little more complicated because realistically, the hydrants provide pullover places for people to get out, especially most buildings are not dormant community and nobody to help. So I find it a little complicated. And I think Laura had raised the issue, is this something to start revisiting throughout, specifically Soho and NoHo, to where this is a huge retail district. And and this is a balance point where we don't have alternate side parking, where it really is a shared use among, maybe not what everybody wants, but it's a balance point. And this building has for retail.
Well, of course, the way it should work is that there's no parking there now. And that should give the space, but nobody obeys the law, so go back to enforcement. And no matter what we say,
Right.
they're not gonna, well, what does everybody else think? Yeah.
I also think, an overarching concern that we all share is the issue of, equitable use of public space and how to use the curbside, how to envision the curbside in a different way. Okay, this involves master plans. This involves, having neighborhood loading zones. This involves not just a Band-Aid or a situation where, there's sort of a competition of who's got the saddest story. And, I just live in I live in a small building, so I shouldn't have anything. You live in a big building, you should have a lot. I mean, that's a no-win. That's a no-win situation if you just have a situation where everybody's just competing for something, for their little piece of the pie here. There needs to be bigger thinking on this. I think we have an opportunity at this moment when people are open to this kind of new way of looking at things. And I, as sympathetic as I am to some of the particular concerns that were expressed tonight, I just am concerned about, kind of a favoritism situation here, because I don't think it moves us to a bigger solution. And I think it moves us more in the direction of a regressive way of thinking. And they do have, and part of it is a problem that doesn't fully exist. I mean, there's, they've got the no parking situation. So and I don't think it's fair to include doormen in law enforcement. So I wanted to.
All right.
Go ahead to point something out. Should it guide your thinking? That congestion pricing is going to kick in June. And in the congestion pricing plan, there are different times where it's peak hours and non-peak hours. The tolls and the non-peak hours, which is usually the night, are less, much less. So it is likely, as it is designed to, that businesses will choose to drive into the city during those non-peak hours.
Good point.
So essentially, what I am understanding from this situation is that the current regulations right now, the no parking regulations, allow for the time period of usually the entire day
Yeah. But not,
for all the cars to clear up so that deliveries can come.
but not post-peak.
But post congestion pricing,
Yeah.
it will be the other way around.
Yeah.
They will need the space in the morning.
Or late at night, like 8 to 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's gonna have to be worked out too, because of opposition to the noise that deliveries.
So that's, so,
That's
yeah,
what we-
This is a good point.
take
Neighborhoods
into
will-
account what this will create during those hours, if you do in fact decide to.
Can we put this on the DOT and say, that they should, given, let's say, congestion pricing coming up and new patterns for trucking and deliveries, and they might be after hours, that they should, do we make a broad request that they generally reconsider these 8 to 6 parking commercial rules, that they're gonna be not really applicable? I mean, they should really think about that.
And it's not, I guess I didn't hear.
Oh, because right now, the no parking, commercial parking is 8 to 6 PM, no parking 8
Yeah,
to 6
right,
PM with the
right.
presumption that that's the busy hour for commercial vehicles.
Right.
But with congestion pricing coming in, it might be 6 to 12 PM. So however, they might shift their deliveries, and deliveries might be, 8 to 10 PM might be peak delivery time.
So maybe the idea is to say that with the shifting of conditions, that this is not the time to make a decision?
Or we can encourage DOT to, I don't know, revisit these regulations and start to, they should get ahead of this and proactively. And if we're trying to get them to look at things on scale, say this, brought to our attention, and they should reconsider a lot of the commercial parking rules.
Yeah, but this was.
Employees, most of these stores are closed at night. You gotta
Okay,
pay
yeah.
employees. There's a lot of different.
Yeah, I mean, the
And
grocery store.
don't know if baby's been fully involved.
Terrence right here, these are all wonderful.
Okay, yes.
Except, wait a minute, but we're trying to talk about one individual request. Do we say yes? Do we say no? Do we say maybe? Do we say part?
What's the thing?
One possible suggestion is that, Jackie from the DOT, when asked about the possibility of expanding the current no parking hours there from 8 to 6 to some other, whether it's
Any time,
through the weekend or later at night. I mean, she expressed two things. One was that, that DOT would have concern about elimination of overnight parking, and I think that's an understandable thought. And so as a result of that, that the DOT, in order to entertain any thought of expanding the hours, would need to do a study. That they can't just say, okay, we're going to change your sign without doing a study first. So we could say, understanding whatever, that we recommend that DOT examine the situation.
Yeah, and I prefer examine to study, because
Yeah,
I don't want them to spend money.
Exactly, that the DOT examine.
Recommends examine conditions?
Yeah. And if they want to change it, right?
And that would be in view of, and I was gonna say, and that would also provide an opportunity for DOT to consider any eventual or theoretical impacts of congestion price.
I also think you have to look at the reality of this specific request. It's getting very broad. During the day, there's not. If anybody here lives in this community, can walk through in that area.
Yeah.
And so it's from 6 p.m. to maybe 9 p.m. That it's a 3-hour window and then the weekends. The issue that we heard is drop-offs. There's a hydrant right there. There's a hotel loading zone, big drop-offs.
Hotel does not share its loading.
Well, no, you just stop and get out. We're not talking about anything big here. If it's open, it's open. So what we're talking about is people leaving their personal vehicles on the curb. There's a doorman that helps you unload. And what happens with all these spaces, you go to many of the doorman building on the weekends. Doorman, building address in the car window. That's the reality.
I didn't see that. Did you?
Explain that. I didn't got that one.
Yeah, it's the doorman drive in and they park their own cars in front and they press the sign window. I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Not an example to talk about.
I know that.
You know, and then if it is a neighborhood loading zone, they're gonna flip out and a delivery truck's parked there.
Well,
That's servicing the whole street.
Hey, wait about the retailers in your building.
You know, because that's not, their request was that we can't get deliveries.
Right.
No.
And I just.
So it's
bring
really
this up.
narrow.
It's very narrow, and I think the neighborhood loading zones are wonderful because they're about servicing.
Yeah.
You know, everything that we do and all these things we get. All that kind of stuff, and this is, we didn't hear a single example.
They did
And-
say that the space would be available for the entire block.
But this block's available most of the time, but it's so happens. Yeah,
Good old fire hydrant.
I mean, just for the point of that, not.
Okay,
And it's
so
commercial.
maybe our way around it though, but maybe our way around it is to say that with congestion pricing coming, and there will be different kinds of patterns of use,
Yes.
that we recommend that DOT, what is the word?
Examine.
Examine.
Yes. Study means research and long-term, and examine is a quicker, it seems to be a quicker way of looking at it.
Why would you ask them to just do that request for this specific thing? I would think that would be a larger conversation.
Oh, maybe that's what we do.
Then you would want to do, but you're putting it in relation to this one little part of the problem. Seem like the right place. to
Yeah.
put it.
Yeah.
Might be better as an agenda item in future meetings.
Right, but we still have this item on our agenda.
Right, so we have to vote. Yeah.
This vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I thought that's what we were talking about, was to examine
Examine it.
the idea, but we would really have to have a hearing on it, I guess, with input more broadly.
But on this, what are we doing on this? How are we voting on this particular one?
Well,
I
that's
think the
it.
fact that, you know, what's been said, Lois said, why should we give this particular building that when other buildings will be, everybody will be asking for the same thing? And I would
Well,
be,
the
I
point
would be
being that
against.
maybe that DOT has to examine more broadly.
Good word.
I really, I'm having problems on how to word it.
You know, to it, I mean, it's.
But it sounds like maybe the hours aren't too limited. Maybe it should be 7 days. Maybe all their loadings. I mean, the thing is, I know we're stuck with this specific one. Maybe all the loading zones should be 7 days a week.
But I
But
think that
I think the,
that is the bids in this area, which have specific leftover. populations. Both of these areas are well represented. in the whole bids. They're the ones who engage with the commercial partners there. This is going to be an issue that they engage with, particularly the Soho bid, given its makeup, where it has a higher residential proportion of membership. That's where the discussion's probably better left. And even the woman who's doing parking studies
businesses, they
spoke
do,
very specifically.
they deal more with the businesses. The bids.
No, I
It's more
understand,
the
but
business, this is the residential building, that's I'm sure that they were.
yeah, but the point is that they're. The neighborhood loading zones are for the servicing of the buildings, not for people's personal vehicles.
Well,
To me,
aren't
I mean,
they
I just, this is,
aren't they for residents, the neighborhood loading zones?
But look, but But you know, Carter's saying.
Yeah, right,
Soho,
Rosie.
the Soho bid, the Soho bid does have more of a residential representation.
All right, what do we do? Do we just say no? Just say no. How many people think we should just say no? Oh, a lot.
I think we can say, just say no, because we feel that the issue, that they brought up a very good point, and that this is worthy of a much more
I'll sort of say quietly, what, yeah.
you know, that
Neighborhood-wide.
this needs to be part of like a master plan, not an individual building request, particular accommodation, great, accommodation.
Broader.
Yeah, and particularly in view of the, you know, impacts of congestion price. It's very reasonable. Impacts of congestion pricing. The unknown, as yet unknown, but.
Okay, so for congestion price, new patterns,
Consequences.
Everybody's price. Need for both accommodation of commercial and.
I think that's.
Combination of both commercial and residential, how's that?
These delivery guys, they're like, there's a street across from me, it's commercial parking only.
All right, you know, I'll put together a few things, but basically saying, okay, how many in favor of saying no?
Favor of saying no?
How many are in favor of saying no?
How many?
You already did. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I'm abstaining.
So, okay, one.
5 is Stella.
Alice says no, or you're in favor of yes, no or yes?
Are you against giving them what they're asking?
I'm saying yes to saying no.
Got it.
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna say no then too.
And an abstention.
I want abstention.
Six in favor.
You need to check on Chris.
Have any public members?
Kristen Shea.
Public.
Is she on the committee?
Who else is here?
Kristen on the committee?
What?
Kristen is on the committee, yes?
Oh, Kristen, yeah. Kristen, what was yours?
On the committee?
Vote. Yeah, but she's on,
What about Joe Flake?
what do you call it? Let's,
They dropped off.
let's,
Yeah, go ahead.
she doesn't count, I don't think. She's a non-quorum. See, Stella counts because Stella's out because of an illness.
Oh, Stella.
So where is Kristen? Is she there? Kristen? Well, whatever, anyhow, that's it.
Next.
One abstention, that would be a public member. What about Joe Flayhaven? Is he around?
Dropped off.
That's not here.
You left, okay, so 6 in favor, 1 abstention, that's it, okay, number 1, okay,
So what's
2, okay, so let's go back.
Let me just write down.
We got some good input from Carter. We got input from Donna. I think those are things we can integrate.
There were 3 streets that got criticism.
Let's see, I think there were more.
Well, there,
See, I have.
oh, there were, yes,
Lafayette, of course.
Christopher.
I would like to say a little more about Lafayette because that's a standing issue where they really just have not attended to it. So that would be for the Petrosino study as well. Now, whether we do that as a separate resolution.
Do we do this as a resolution or just a letter?
What?
Point of information.
Yeah,
I'm reading this letter that's dated March 27th. It says, "We are happy to inform you that an open streets location has been approved in your district."
for all of them.
Approved.
They
All of them
are,
are
yes,
approved.
but they will have comments.
Oh,
On
comment.
the bottom it says, "From the date of this notification, your office will have 45 days to offer any comments to the Department of Transportation for this open street location." But they already approved it.
Yeah, but I'm assuming if they're going to allow for comments.
What's gonna happen with our comments? Because they're already approved. Anything's really gonna happen? That's the question.
That's why I think about the Petrosino because we've nagged them so much that
That
maybe
is the
that's.
question.
They
They were approved. what, we give our comments and comments really count?
Well, I mean, it's something like Morton Street, because the person doesn't even exist anymore. That may count.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then.
I mean, I think this all begs the question, you know, if this is a fait accompli, where is the room for our public comment here? It's backwards that the public needs to be involved in these.
Talk to our DOT
beforehand.
time.
Yeah.
Who seemed to indicate that we had some way.
That it, you know, and also, you know, there are
That's why I.
positive situations like this. They're not all going to be, you know, out of the ones tonight, we heard people who with concerns about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
2, 3, 4, I have.
Lafayette Street.
Yeah.
Christopher Street, Waverly Place, Morton Street, and both parts of Spring Street.
Like spring.
It was doing, if they were closing Gansevoort Street, we probably would have had 4 other people on bond tonight about all the closures.
And that there is an issue with meat packing.
No, but that's been.
Wait a minute now,
No.
I have Christopher Street, Waverly to 7th Avenue South. Oh, here's Waverly, okay. See, I was thinking calling out all those streets, at least saying what the concerns were. And then also talking in a broader way of what we were talking about before.
The sequencing problem of community involvement here.
This in a more holistic way.
Right.
First.
So this would be, is this being, so this is not a resolution as much as a letter to DOT with our comments. We're not resolving it.
Resolution, why would we not?
But
do a
what we'd be
resolution?
resolving would be saying we resolve that Spring Street should not happen. I mean, I don't know.
No, we're not saying it shouldn't happen. We're saying that there are problems there that need to be addressed.
Okay, so what are we, okay.
I mean, why not a
So we
resolution?
would have to say a vote, voting in favor of these things?
Okay, no, wait a minute now.
Regardless of
Yeah,
problems?
yeah.
That doesn't make sense. If we're in favor and there are problems, that doesn't make any sense.
What do you mean?
We just brought up that there are many problems that have been brought to our attention, that you thought about, right? So how could we vote in favor of these things with all the problems that exist?
Well, we're not gonna vote in favor of it. We're gonna
You have
vote
to
in
deny
favor
all of them.
of what we're going to
We're
ask.
gonna deny
We're
one
not
by one?
gonna deny, I don't think we're intending to deny. That's why I'm not sure.
That's my question.
Well, no, my intention was certainly to deny
On Lafayette.
Lafayette. That's why I say maybe a separate little resolution again on Lafayette.
And
then
Morton
one Morton
Street needs
Street-
to be denied also because Morton Street needs to be denied also because the person who's listed as the community partner is an entity that isn't, that no longer has connective tissue to Morton Street.
The only reason I question.
And furthermore, there's a new player in that business's space, and Donna has brought to our attention that they signed a stipulation saying that they would not participate.
To them, I will say their name is not on this paper.
No, I know, but I mean, but I'm just saying furthermore, the current applicant, the new person has signed a stipulation agreeing to not do that.
Well.
So that's, that
Okay,
one is like done.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Morton is dead in the water because no one sponsors.
They also said that they would have to go back to the committee if they want to participate in this type of.
Meaning the Morton Street.
Yes. They would have to go back to the.
Yeah, so that is sort of, that could be part of the other resolution, because it's a smaller part. Lafayette is a long issue. So it almost seems to call out.
So can we vote?
Well, now the question is, well, let's, I know you want to go home, so do I, so do all of us.
So we didn't get any clarity on this program, where the rules stand, if there's any comment period going forward, what any guidelines are, anything. And at some point, I would suggest that for next year, the committee
Reverse.
Just a dialogue, right?
So we can put that in, we can put it in a
I mean,
resolution,
we've
right?
never
They originally.
been a presentation streets on permanent anything that I can recall ever coming to us. I don't even know where the program stands, but I think
You know, I
what
think
it is
because
that,
COVID came along.
right, so there's no opportunity where you can bring the operator in the community together, each individual location, and have a discussion.
Constructive.
And construct, right, and even some of these streets that I mentioned to you yesterday, Shirley, like, even better signage would ameliorate.
Yeah, that we've asked for.
Here in our community. And I think Spring Street is a fantastic example. So that's very complicated. I've personally been chased up, you know, with a car right behind me on the bike.
No,
There's no
that's-
room to roll
that's
over the sides, but I mentioned that before. If cars knew not to go on Spring at 6, they go do whatever. Down streets. So there's solution in here, but there's no opportunity to address any solution. And we don't even have the operator.
All right, the question is, what do we do in a resolution right now? I say Lafayette, Petrosino, a separate thing, just as a follow-up to what we've been asked before. My thought on these other things was the, what did you say, 6 foot tall out?
If you consider including Lafayette, and consider Spring Street too.
Mine weren't called out.
Yeah, so, okay, the ones that were on the list that were called out, and just to say what the comments were.
But I also think we really need to be very specific about Morton Street because there's like a ghost applicant.
Yeah, so that maybe we can say something about a resolved on Morton Street. Right? But the other ones, it's more to say, we were talking about that DOT.
In the future, they should come to us before the approval.
So, and that they really need to look at this in the context holistically. That's not a real sentence, but I can
In order to truly serve the community.
look at in the context of other streets, I guess. Something like that, the context of other streets.
You know, in order to truly be of service to the community.
You know, in terms of mutual impacts. How's that? Something like that.
I mean, it's completely hodgepodge because
It's random.
And we did once recommend in this group a network of open streets, which
Right.
means that we could actually enjoy ourselves as pedestrians. We could wayfind.
Right.
along
So nice. This is
streets.
just random.
Yes, we did talk about that. We asked for it.
Wonderful master plan.
Yes.
Oh, Todd, you want to send me your comments?
Yeah, I mean,
Email me your
Susan
comments.
pretty much,
And then I'll pull
yeah,
out.
Susan pretty much summed up the. I made comments, it's just the one street.
Right,
And
okay, so we can think,
and it'd be nice to have an opportunity to discuss them because there's ways.
Yeah. right,
Some
so.
shouldn't be there and some can be there. and
So the
exist
major
in much
two
better.
things are to look at the context that Donna was pointing out. In the context in terms of what the impacts are on the rest of the community, the other streets, and even the other streets' impacts on the open streets and how they relate, whatever, related. And the other thing is, I just forgot what you said. Oh, and coming to the community. That's it, right? Yeah, I think we're done. We don't have to comment on Jack's.
Don't have, what about the Sixth Avenue one?
Right,
So
so
we're-
we decided that.
Yeah, we
already,
decided
right?
that we're gonna recognize there's a bigger one, but in the interim, because the street is not.
Right, and
paved.
because there's right now the opportunity, you're
Yes.
gonna write that,
Right, okay,
yeah, and then I can work on it. with you.
okay, thank
Right.
you.
So everybody agreed to that? Of course. Yeah, with the Sixth Avenue one, we're aware that there is a broader plan that goes down to Bernard Street. But in the meantime, because there is the paving and
Yes.
whatever going on. And we're asking for protected, right? For
Yeah.
Protected.
Yes.
Rocio, go home.
No, I'm
Are you in
fine.
favor of that?
Just had to go to the bathroom, that's why. Excuse me.
Yeah, we're done. I think, so Mrs. Carter, send me a comment. And then if you.
I'm just glad we're a person. I go back.
You're like sharing the problem, they can't turn the mic on.
Yeah, then, yeah. I have meetings, I don't know how the before meetings turn out, you know. You're on 1 in the morning. Oh my God.
Really?
Remember during COVID when it was really, no, this one was.
Sure, yeah.
We didn't start until 11. Are we?
I guess Shirley.
Remember that? I remember.
Shirley.
And I'm like, even though you're in the house, it does.
Officially, yeah.
Oh, right. Are you all waiting out there?
They're all
We're done.
dismissed.
We have decided what we're going to do. And that is it. And thank you all for attending and for your patience with this endless meeting.